Chapter 4400. The secret guard peeked at the crown prince's tense face and became even more anxious. The 10,000 elites that we sent previously met up with the elites from the Tsang province in front of the Wangchuan snowy ridge, but what? Arbor frowned and quickly asked. The secret guard was stuttering, and it was tiring to listen to him. The secret guard quickly cupped his hands and said, "It disappeared very quickly. Even the night pavilion couldn't contact them." Disappeared near the Wangchuan snowy ridge? 20,000 people? Arbor was in disbelief. Yes. The secret guard quickly nodded. I heard that there is a large deserted island nearby, and no one has set foot there in the past few decades. 20,000 elites from the Tsang province and the Tsang province had mysteriously disappeared from a deserted island near the snowy ridge. This wasn't good news. The elites from the two provinces had quietly disappeared from the Wangchuan snowy ridge. They weren't ordinary soldiers, and they were all above the 12th level of the spiritual realm. How was it possible for them to disappear without any warning? Also, it was impossible for them to gather so many elites in such a short period of time. Arbor knew that the situation was serious, and he quickly turned to look at the crown prince. Prince Mo walked forward and said in a deep voice, "Continue to ask the night pavilion to gather information. We must find out what happened." Yes. The secret guard quickly cupped his hands and left in a hurry. Arbor turned to look at Mo Lien with a serious expression. "Do you want to go and take a look?" 20,000 people suddenly disappeared, and it wasn't a small matter. Mo Lien nodded. All right, there was something fishy about this. How could 20,000 elites suddenly disappear from a deserted island in front of the snowy mountains? With so many people, even if there was a battle, it wouldn't be a small matter. Arbor walked out of the door and said, "I'll inform everyone to move out." Mo Lien quickly followed him and pulled him to her side. "Long Qian is outside." Arbor sneered. One wouldn't visit a temple without a reason. Could it be that these mermen are here for the ownership of the 10,000-year mermaid pearl? Mo Lien looked down at her and said softly, "You don't have to care about what they say." Of course. Arbor's expression was cold. Who has the time to care about them? Whether these people lived or died in the future had nothing to do with her. Mo Lien grasped her small hand and lowered his head to look at her. "Are you angry?" "No." Arbor shook his head and pulled him out of the door. He whispered, "Don't worry. These people have nothing to do with me." Mo Lien smiled and gently squeezed her little hand. "If you don't want to see them, I'll ask someone to chase them away." "No need. Why should we care about them? We will depart immediately." Arbor raised his head slightly and gave him a calm expression. "All right." Mo Lien nodded slightly. The two of them held hands and walked out of the room. They summoned the members of the Feng clan and the secret guards and briefly told them about the 20,000 elites that went missing. "Does everyone need time to prepare?" "No." Everyone replied in unison. Arbor nodded. She turned around and saw little Tai Sui, He Chun, and a few others walking out of their rooms. Fairy Ginkgo suddenly flew to Arbor's side and looked at her from head to toe. She smiled and said, "Oh, my little sister Xiao Qiao. You're really fast this time. You're already a 5th grade divine master in such a short time." Chapter 4401. Mu Xingqian felt very tired. Sister advanced too quickly and left him in the dust in a flash. In the future, it would be extremely difficult to catch up with his younger sister's footsteps. His original desire to protect Sister was still very strong, even now. However, reality always made him feel a faint trace of sorrow. The young crown princess glanced at Fairy Ginkgo expressionlessly. "Is it very fast?" "It's just SOSO." "Fairy Ginkgo, why is this sister suddenly unable to continue the conversation and bafflingly at a loss for words?" The atmosphere suddenly froze. Everyone looked at each other in dismay before shifting their gazes to the little stoic's expressionless face. They saw the young crown princess standing in front of them with a calm expression with one hand behind her back. Fairy Ginkgo couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She used her eyes to signal for her sister, the peony fairy, to continue the conversation and break this awkward atmosphere. The peony fairy merely pretended not to see and shifted her gaze to the side. Thankfully, this awkward atmosphere didn't last for more than 3 seconds before Prince Imo inwardly walked up in amusement and grabbed his wife's hand to walk out of the courtyard. Arbor was led a few steps before he suddenly tilted his small head and asked in confusion, "Was the atmosphere a bit awkward just now?" Imo Lien held back her laughter with difficulty and nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Because their advancement speed isn't as fast as JoJo's," Imo Lien said very honestly. JoJo advanced 3 major realms in one day. Since ancient times, there have been numerous deity realm experts. I'm afraid there are only a few who can surpass you. Oh, Arbor nodded. Imo Lien twitched her mouth. It's not ordinary at all, so that's why. Arbor nodded in realization. Actually, I could have broken through to deity realm level 6 in one go, but I feel that advancing too quickly isn't a good thing. Arbor turned around and blinked. It's better to leave some energy when appropriate and plan slowly. Don't you think so? Emolian was having a hard time trying to hold back her laughter, but she had to pretend to be serious. She nodded and praised JoJo for being smart. The little stoic carefully studied his expression. Could it be that you want to laugh? No. Prince Imo, who had a strong desire to live, quickly denied it. He shook his head and said, "When did I smile?" Prince Imo hurriedly changed the topic. "Oh right, JoJo. That 10,000-year mermaid Pearl swallowed the black dragon soul body earlier. Are you okay?" Arbor shook his head. "What problem can I have?" She seemed to have completely forgotten how dangerous the situation had been as she continued to brag. That black dragon's soul has been sealed by the 10,000-year mermaid Pearl. No matter how powerful it is, it won't be able to cause trouble for the time being. Oh, right. She suddenly thought of something and stopped in her tracks. She raised her hand. The faint hum of a sword could be heard in the air. A moment later, the thunderclap sword flew through the air and landed in her hand with a whoosh. Before she fainted, she had left the thunderclap sword on the ground. Emolian had probably picked it up for her. She touched the sword hilt and then put it back into her conscious. The thunderclap sword was a holy weapon, so she naturally didn't need to worry that it would be picked up by someone with ulterior motives. Even if it was picked up with her powerful divine sense, it was impossible for others to strip off her imprint on the thunderclap sword. Arbor thought for a moment and roughly explained the 10,000-year mermaid Pearl's 3 main functions to Mo Lien, Hishirchun, and the others. Everyone was naturally surprised. Chapter 4402. Emolian suddenly recalled something and said in realization, "When your soul left your body, hundreds of ghosts gathered in Southern City and tried to invade your body. In the end, they were destroyed by the aurora of heaven and earth in your Danteon. Now, it seems like it's the effect of the 10,000-year-old mermaid Pearl. After the 10,000-year-old mermaid Pearl broke its seal, it had been protecting its master's body and doing its best to protect its little master. So what kind of deep hatred did the mermaid Pearl have with the black dragon when it lost control of itself? Seeing that black dragon, he didn't even care about his beloved little master's body. Mother put the mermaid Pearl in my body." Arbor turned to look at Mu Xingqian. Even Big Brother didn't have it. Mu Xingqian couldn't help but laugh. Big Brother is a man. He could protect himself. Mother must have her own reasons for leaving the mermaid Pearl with you. Of course, she has her reasons. Long Qian's cold voice came from the door. When the 10,000-year-old mermaid Pearl enters the body, even a dying person can be pulled back from the gates of hell. Long Qian looked at the little stoic in front of her with a complicated expression. Your mother was hunted down in the Lower Star region. The battle with the Shuntian prefecture was so intense. How could she not be injured? Arbor looked at the old woman in front of him coldly. He suddenly felt that her wrinkled old face was especially glaring. What do you mean? Emolian coldly interrupted Long Qian's chatter. Shut up. Arbor reached out to pull her sleeve and said calmly, "If you have something to say, just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush?" Long Qian's icy gaze swept past Emolian, then Ji Chun, before finally settling on Xiao Mu. She stated without the slightest ripple of emotion, "If it weren't for this shark pearl, you would have already died prematurely. Do I need to say it clearly?" Long Qian took a deep breath and continued. It was the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl that saved your life. When you were still an infant, it was the 10,000-year mermaid pearl that entered your body and pulled you back from the brink of death. You've come back to life, but your body is so weak. You were just an infant back then. You couldn't control this 10,000-year-old shark pearl at all. That's why your mother had no choice but to seal the 10,000-year mermaid pearl. Arbor's eyes were cold and lonely. He stared at her for a while. Your guess? It's just speculation, but I know your mother. I know all of her thoughts. Long Qian replied calmly. She would do anything for you. As long as it's something that can save you, she would definitely try. How do you think your mother died? Stop talking. Mo Yin roared in anger. Her face was filled with rage, and her eyes were cold. Without another word, she whipped the black flaming spirit whip towards Long Qian. Grandmother! Long Shangyun and Long, who could not help but exclaim. Long Qian suddenly reached out and grabbed the flaming spirit whip that was coming toward her. The strong aura of a transcendent god rushed towards her. Her palm was burned by the flaming spirit whip. In an instant, there was a sizzling sound, and her entire palm was burned black. However, she looked at Arbor and Mo Yin with a mocking expression and said coldly, Your mother died to save you. If she had kept the mermaid pearl, she wouldn't have died so early. Shut up. Mu Xingqian, He Chun, and the others were furious. I'll make up for it tomorrow and adjust the time. See you at 4 p.m. Chapter 4403. Long Qian clasped his palms together while a defensive light suddenly emanated from his body, and it was used to resist the force that was being thrown at him simultaneously. Rays of light danced in the air and landed on the old woman's defensive barrier. It shattered with one hit, and it shattered instantly. Long Qian took a few steps back and was sent flying. In the blink of an eye, two green figures passed through the crowd and rushed to Long Qian's side. The two of them moved at lightning speed, grabbing onto Long Qian's arms at the same time, stopping her from flying away. Elder Zhu, elderly. The crowd bowed and greeted them. The two elders must have been alerted by the commotion caused by her advancement, right? Even the two elders were alerted. Seriously, the mermaids and mermen whispered among themselves and secretly looked at Arbor. Mo Yin, He Chun, and Mu Xingqian quickly turned to look at Arbor's expression. They wondered if Jojo could handle what Long Qian said. On the other hand, Xiao Mu's expression was unexpectedly calm and collected, but her eyes were still coldly staring at Long Qian. Let's go. Long Qian was stunned, and so were all the mermaids and mermen. After the Dragon Clan leader said those words, this child actually did not have the slightest reaction. He didn't even have a change in his emotions. Stop right there, Long Qian shouted. Mother! Long Qiyu, who heard the news, ran over as fast as he could while panting. Madame Long had a strange expression on her face, and she looked at Arbor with a strange gaze. Mother! Long Qiyu cupped his hands together and bowed to the two elders beside Long Qian. Elder Zhu, elderly. Mother! Long Qiyu said anxiously. What are you trying to do, Mother? The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl was left behind by our ancestors. Since it chose little sister, it belongs to her. Now that little sister has given it to her own daughter, there is no way to deny it. Long Qian looked at her son coldly. What do you know? Do you think I'm after the pearl? I'm just telling them the truth. She can't control it. The reason why everything was fine before was because the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl was sealed by Chu Yun. But now, how could it be the same as before? Right. A merman immediately called out. For the sake of this merman pearl, many people have been sacrificed. The mermaid pearl chose First Miss, but not First Miss's daughter. Now that young Miss is dead, the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl should be returned to our merman race. Let's choose another destined person. Yes. Moreover, the shark pearl has devoured our clan's guardian black dragon. It should be returned. Return it. The mermaids and mermen's eyes lit up. They stared at Arbor like wolves and tigers. They had already tossed the matter of Mo Yin and the others injuring Long Qian to the back of their minds. In the face of such tempting benefits, most people would probably throw away their brains. Arbor looked at these ugly faces coldly. He opened his mouth slightly, and a white jade bead as bright as the sun and moon flew out of his mouth. It hung silently in front of her. 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. A young merman stared at the white jade bead with desire. Without saying a word, he was the first to rush forward and reach out to touch the sharp pearl. Suddenly, a strong light was emitted from the mermaid pearl. Long Qian's eyelids twitched, and he quickly said, "Back off." However, it was too late. The young merman screamed as the white light covered him. Chapter 4404. Under the illumination of this white light, his entire person disintegrated into snowflake-like fragments, completely dissolving from head to toe. His body and Tao vanished, and his soul was extinguished. Not even the slightest trace of his existence could be found between heaven and earth. Arbor suddenly laughed uproariously. His laughter was calm, clear, and icy. However, Imol Yin, He Chun, and the others didn't feel too good about it. The little stoic coolly glanced at Long Qian, who had an unsightly expression. With a wave of her hand, the pure white mermaid pearl landed in her palm. "Do you see it? What's the difference?" "This is the difference." The little stoic's cold voice, simple and clear, landed in the merfolk's ears. "If you still don't understand, I might as well tell you clearly. I am the person you said was destined for the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl. You could try again if you don't believe me." Arbor held the mermaid pearl in one hand and walked to the other two merfolk without a second thought. "You want to try? Or you want to try?" The two of them retreated several steps in horror. "You don't even have the courage to try, yet you still want the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl?" Arbor pushed that person's chest. "Are you kidding me? Look at your cowardly faces. I truly feel embarrassed for Ancestor Xuanji. How could she have such ignorant and scoundrel descendants like you?" The little stoic turned on her mocking mode, each and every word extremely cutting. "If I were Ancestor Xuanji, I would be alive from anger even after I die. Thankfully, she has already passed away, so I don't need to see your ugly and embarrassing faces." Madame Long forced a smile when she saw the atmosphere so stiff. "This child, how can you speak like that? We didn't understand the situation before. Since the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl has chosen you as its destined person." Then Arbor raised his hand to stop Madame Long from continuing. He coldly looked at Long Qian and said, "You still want to stop me?" Long Qian remained silent. A mermaid suddenly swam out of the crowd and pointed at Arbor as she scolded harshly. "What do you have to be proud of? Isn't it all because your mother sacrificed her own life to make you who you are now? What else do you think you have without your mother? Your mother is the eldest daughter of our Wang Chuanlong clan, and she was born in Wang Chuan. Without everything that Wang Chuan gave her, could you have everything that you have now? It's fine if you don't know how to be grateful, but now you're actually speaking rudely to our patriarch. You've forgotten your roots." Behind Arbor stood a row of purple forest guards, and when they heard this, they couldn't help but unsheathe their swords in unison. Arbor looked at her coldly. "Who are you?" Even though the mermaid was a bit afraid, she still said coldly, "You don't deserve to know who I am. If you still have filial piety, you should return the 10,000-years-old mermaid pearl to our merfolk race and tell us the method to tame the mermaid pearl." Ma Yichen sneered, "What a righteous speech." Arbor stared coldly at the mermaid in front of him. He held the mermaid pearl in his hand, and the pearl suddenly glowed, instantly forming a thin whip of light. It slithered through the air like a snake and hit the mermaid heavily. The mermaid looked up at Arbor in shock and covered her face with one hand. A shocked expression hung on his face. His entire body had already shattered into pieces of willow catkins. With a bang, he shattered and scattered with the wind. Those who stop me die. Chapter 4405. The air instantly froze, and it was as if time and space had stopped. Everyone stared in shock at the little stoic standing in front of them. She was enveloped in the light of the 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl and was emitting a terrifying halo. At this moment, Arbor was exuding a powerful aura from top to bottom. The mermen couldn't help but tremble in fear and be speechless. Several mermen in the front row suddenly felt the ground beneath their feet trembling violently. They looked down and instantly cried out in horror, "The seabed is shaking." It wasn't just the seabed that was shaking. The entire Forgotten River's secret realm was shaking. The seawater above them was also surging violently, as if it would break through the seal at any moment and pour down. "Form the formation!" A young merman screamed in panic. All the mermen hurriedly moved and formed a defensive formation in a fluster to block the fierce little demon god in front of them. Arbor stood in front of them with a cold and heartless expression. His eyes were fixed on Long Qian and the others. The mermaid pearl in her hand released waves of intense light, and the frightening sound of the churning seawater reached their ears. The purple forest guards turned to look and were horrified. They saw a water dragon rising from the depths of the sea like an angry dragon roaring in the sky. It surged violently and quietly stood behind the little stoic. The dense water, spiritual energy around her, bit by bit, slowly spread out, like soldiers setting up a formation, neatly and densely packed, gathering around her. This scene caused everyone's scalp to tingle and their bodies to stiffen. Long Qian was dazed as she stared blankly at the little girl standing in front of her. A complicated emotion flashed through her eyes. With such ability to control water and such a water spiritual technique, no one could continue to deceive themselves and say that the mermaid pearl couldn't be used by her. This child had completely inherited the mermaid pearl's power. The 10,000-year-old mermaid pearl had been unsealed not long ago, and its water spiritual energy had yet to fully recover. In the future, Long Qian didn't dare to imagine. "Go, exterminate them." Xiao Mu pointed forward apathetically, and the roaring, monstrous waves behind her were like giant dragons ascending to the heavens. They let out a furious roar of the sea as they ferociously attacked the merfolk with a crash. Elder Li, Elder Zhu, and Elder Li jumped in fright. They worked together to form a defensive barrier and roared, "Defend!" Only after colliding with that power would they know how strong it was. Even with two immortal reverends working together, they were still unable to control the surging water spirits. The water spout that blotted out the sky and covered the earth fiercely whipped the barrier in front of the two elders. The force of the impact made the mermen behind the elder feel extremely defeated. They had a premonition that if the elders were unable to stop the torrential waves, they would very likely end up like the woman from before, shattering under the impact of the waves and turning into snowflakes before disappearing into nothingness. The little stoic, who was slowly walking towards them, was like a queen who controlled the power of the deep sea. She was terrifying and dazzling, causing people to feel fearful. Long Qian's old injuries had yet to heal, and now that she had new injuries, she was truly unable to join forces with the two elders to resist this destructive force. Long Shangyun was supporting her with one hand over her heart. She slowly raised her head and stared at the little stoic who was getting closer and closer. "I knew a long time ago." Arbor coldly stared at Long Qian and said in an unusually cold voice, "Didn't you ask me if I knew the true cause of Mother's death?" "I know. The moment I saw the mermaid pearl, I knew." Chapter 4406. Long Qian's heart skipped a beat. There was an indescribable feeling in her heart as she stared coldly at her granddaughter. At this moment, it was as if she was looking at her high-spirited, laughing daughter again. Their figures somehow overlapped with each other. No, they didn't look alike at all. Her daughter, Long Chuyun, might have been arrogant when she was young, but she definitely wasn't as cold and unfeeling as the little stoic in front of her. "Didn't you ask me what else I have without my mother?" "Yes. Without my mother, I am nothing." "Jojo." Mu Xingqian's heart tightened, and he couldn't help but murmur softly, "My life was given to me by my mother. For me, she disregarded her own life and did everything she could to keep me alive." Arbor stared coldly at Long Qian and said in a deep voice, "That is why I have to live well. Continue her life, and continue her future." walk my own path, and continue my future. Do you know what this is? Arbor stared coldly and mockingly at Long Qian. Long Qian's heart sank, and her eyes narrowed. This is called mother-daughter kinship. How would you heartless and unscrupulous people understand? How would you understand? Mother didn't give me life to let me wallow in the past, and she definitely didn't want me to be filled with guilt. You don't understand. Arbor sighed deeply. She only wanted me to live well. There's only hope if you live. There's only a future if you live. Living is so easy to say. Arbor placed his hand over his heart and looked up coldly at Long Qian. I have a clear conscience. I know what I want to do. I understand. You don't understand. Yin stared at her wife's back with endless tenderness in her eyes. Mu Xingqian's eyes were slightly red, and he pursed his lips tightly as he looked at his sister with relief. Xiao Mu slowly lowered her hand, and the torrential seawater behind her churned up into the sky, engulfing Long Qian and the others like a gigantic curtain of water that blotted out the sky. Seeing that the huge water curtain was about to hit their defensive barrier, they suddenly stopped. The two elders' faces darkened. Their saint powers surged as if they were facing a great enemy, waiting for the power to fall. However, the water curtain shattered bit by bit, disintegrating into wisps of watery mist in front of their eyes, spreading out in all directions and letting out soft, sizzling noises. Long Qian's eyes were already open wide, and she was just waiting for the attack to arrive. However, the scene before her caused her to be unable to react for a time. Cousin, she felt like he was about to die, and he took a deep breath. He secretly loosened his clenched fists and wanted to say a few more words. Arbor's cold and resolute voice rang clearly in their ears. This is the last time. For the sake of Ancestor Xuanji, I'll let you off. From now on, Arbor has severed all ties with the Forgotten River Dragon clan. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. If there's an invasion, just like this, Xiao Mu swatted over with a backhand palm, and a giant stone lion that was 30 feet away instantly disintegrated in a fine powder amidst a flash of white light. Long Qi's eyes widened. He looked at Arbor and then turned to look at his grandmother. Long Qiyu was deeply affected and had already fainted. Madame Long quickly called for someone to help support him. She looked at Arbor with a complicated gaze. Long Qian also felt a buzzing sound in her ears as she stared coldly at Arbor's back. Chapter 4407. The words, "will sever all ties and have nothing to do with each other," echoed in her ears. Long Qian couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, and her complexion withered even more. Grandmother, grandmother. Long Shangyun supported Long Qian, and Long Qian also hurried forward to help. After saying that, Xiaomu didn't look at the Dragon Clan clansmen anymore. It was as if looking at them a few more times would dirty her eyes. She turned around and walked toward the city gates with an indifferent expression. Everyone else naturally followed her. Mo Lien and He Chun both paused in their footsteps and turned around simultaneously. One of them released a pitch-black fire spirit, while the other threw out a wood spirit. They were so fast that it was hard to predict. The two forces heavily collided with the two elders. The pitiful two immortal venerables elders had already expended a lot of holy power to set up the defensive array. Now that they were attacked by two people at the same time, how could they withstand it? The two elders were instantly sent flying by this attack. Everyone was aghast as they looked at Mo Lien and He Chun in shock and fear. Two of the strongest elders in their clan were actually no match for the two people beside the little stoic. At this moment, a trace of fear involuntarily rose in the hearts of the merfolk. Fortunately, they didn't attack just now, right? If they were to really fight, would even a tenth of them be able to remain here? Long Qian looked over with a grave expression. Before the Dragon Clan leader could speak, the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal took out a small fan and waved it. He smiled and turned to leave with the group. Mo Lien merely glanced at them coldly before following without a word. The group of mermaids and mermen all had cold sweat oozing out of their bodies. They glanced at each other, feeling as if they had just walked through the gate of hell. Jar, a granddaughter will help you back to rest? Long Shangyun didn't know why she was stammering and couldn't speak clearly. Long Qin glanced at her and nodded silently. Long Qin couldn't help but sigh deeply. She glanced at the clansmen around her and then at her father who was being helped away. She massaged her temples as she felt a headache coming on. The situation in Wangchuan was so serious, but the clansmen and the crown princess of the divine prefecture parted on bad terms. Let's not talk about working together in the future. It was clearly the river of forgetfulness that proposed to unite the 3 continents and cooperate on land and sea. But now it was truly a joke. If the little Stoic didn't participate, then perhaps the Zhangzhou and underworld provinces would also withdraw, right? Long Huan couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Not long after Long Huan returned to his own courtyard, he was called to the study room by his father, Long Qiyu. His father's body had always been frail, and he was bedridden all year round. Now, because of the little Stoic's matter, he was overly worried, and his complexion had become increasingly unsightly these past 2 days. When Long Huan saw this, he could only offer a few more words of consolation. Long Qiyu asked, "What do you think about the alliance between the sea and the land to break the heavenly fate?" Long Huan was silent for a while before he told Long Qiyu about his thoughts. "Cousin has cut off all ties with our forgotten Creek Dragon clan, and has already said so." I think, when Long Qiyu thought of what happened just now, he could not help but feel a burst of heartache. He had always known that his mother, Long Qian, was excessively headstrong and self-opinionated. Once she set her mind on something, she would insist on accomplishing it and would not care about anything else. But he really didn't expect things to turn out like this. Breaking the heavenly fate is the right thing to do, Long Qiyu said in a deep voice. Why don't you follow the original plan and arrange for Jojo and the others to go to the base on Lisha Island? Chapter 4408. Long Huan couldn't help but smile wryly. Do you think they'll be willing? The little Stoics group must have returned to the Divine Province by now. No, you should go and talk to her. Father, aren't you being too optimistic? Long Huan said helplessly. Cousin has already broken off relations with our Wangchuan Long clan. Breaking off relations with us is a personal matter. Cooperating is for the greater good of the 3 provinces. Long Qiyu looked distressed. Although father hasn't interacted much with your cousin, I can tell that this child is someone who clearly distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. She won't destroy an alliance against the Heavenly Fate Empire for her own selfish desires. Realization dawned on Long Huan. Although his father's health had always been poor, he knew that his father was a man of great wisdom. All right, father, I'll go find them now. Long Huan inwardly decided that no matter how the people around his cousin beat or scolded him, he would endure it all. Long Qiyu raised his hand and patted his shoulder. You've been wronged. Long Huan shook his head and forced a smile. Suddenly, a royal guard's report came from outside the courtyard, and Long Huan called him in. What is it? The crown princess's group is heading towards the snowy mountain range. What? Long Huan was involuntarily startled. Why would they go? Long Huan turned to say to Long Qiyu, Father, I'll bring people to find them now. Ferocious beasts roamed the depths of the snowy mountain range. Although the little Stoics group had many people and many of them had high cultivations, it would probably be troublesome if they were surrounded by a group of ferocious beasts. Long Qiyu also nodded quickly. Why are they going there? Oh, that's right, go call Yin'er over, Long Qiyu added. Long Huan's gaze was a bit complicated, but he still nodded. He turned to walk to the door and called a royal guard over to give him some instructions. That royal guard was taken aback and hastily said, Young Master Ding? He seems to have left with the crown princess's group. Long Qiyu was startled. What happened? Long Huan couldn't help but frown. Was he captured, or did he follow them himself? Captured? That wasn't very likely. Moreover, he had secretly observed that the little Stoic didn't give Ding Yun any face, so their relationship definitely wasn't good. The guard scratched his head and said, When I came over, I only took a glance. I didn't see clearly whether young Master Ding was caught or left with them voluntarily. Father, I'll go now. What are you going for? Madame Long walked in. Her warm and gentle smile was gone, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. She said mockingly, "He followed them of his own accord. You're in such a hurry to chase after him. It's as if you care about your son. I've been back for so long, but I've never seen you treat him differently. So it turns out that you didn't dare to show it because of my presence. You're really good at pretending." Madame Long sneered. Long Chuyu was choked by her words and was a little speechless. "Mother." Long Qian looked at his parents awkwardly. As a son, it was difficult for him to be sandwiched between his parents. He couldn't help his mother criticize his father, so he just stood there awkwardly. "What's wrong with you now? What about me? Tell me what's wrong with me. What, you Long Chuyu, hid it from me for so many years and secretly gave birth to a son outside. Yet I can't tell you." Long Chuyu originally wanted to speak, but he was stopped by a violent cough. "Father." Long Huan hastily went up and handed him a cup of water. "I'm not done yet. Wait a moment." Chapter 4409. Long Chuyu drank a mouthful of water and calmed his breathing. Only then did he open his mouth to speak. "Haven't I already explained this matter to you? I didn't know that Xin, you still call her so affectionately." A trace of disgust flitted across Madame Long's eyes. "Back then, if I hadn't acted first and went to reason with that bitch Ding Zian, I wouldn't have been able to do anything. Long Chuyu, who do you think should sit on Madame Long's seat today?" Long Chuyu naturally lost face after being scolded by his wife in front of his son. He couldn't help but fly into a rage out of humiliation. Unreasonable. Then, he turned and entered the inner hall without another word, unwilling to speak with Madame Long anymore. Madame Long turned to look at the embarrassed Long Huan. "Huaner, you must be tired from running around these days. Rest well at home and don't go anywhere." Long Huan hurriedly said, "But mother." "No buts." Madame Long pulled her son away. "What does that brat Ding Yun's life or death have to do with you? Just let him stir up trouble with the divine province's crown prince. When the time comes, others can't stand him and will naturally chase him back." But Long Huan was dragged out by Madame Long, and he rubbed his forehead with a headache. Sometimes, when a woman is unreasonable, no one can persuade her. Mu Xingqian nudged Mo Lian's elbow and glanced at the railing. His younger sister was sprawled on the railing alone, gazing at the clear water and blue sky as dusk deepened. It had already been almost an hour. "Are we really not going to talk to her?" Mo Lian glanced sideways at him and shook her head slightly. Let her have some time alone. He understood his chow too well. No matter how resolute her words were, today she had broken off all ties with the Wang Chuan dragon clan and her mother's family. Now that she had come to this point, she would definitely not feel good in her heart. Mu Xingqian sighed. When he looked up, he saw Sikong Fuling and Ding Yun walking over side by side. "Young Master Ding, Miss Sikong." Mu Xingqian stood up and gave him a seat. Mo Yin looked up at the two of them casually. Why is there only tea and no wine?" Young Master Ding sat down with a smile, took a teacup, and poured himself a cup of tea. Mo Yin looked at him deeply. You must have heard of my mother, Ding Zian." Ding Yin smiled and drank the tea in one gulp. He put down the cup and looked towards Mo Yin. "I had an ill-fated relationship with Long Chuyu when I was young. That's how I came to be the elegant and carefree young master. Eldest brother." Sikong Fuling could not stand his tone of self-amusement and glanced at him in displeasure. Good, Ding Yun said with a smile. "As a son, I naturally can't interfere in my parents' past. Anyway, I'm quite familiar with this area. I didn't lie to you. When I was young, my mother brought me here to stay for a while. At that time, I was still young and didn't know anything. I didn't know why we had to stay in this cold and wet place surrounded by water. I only found out later. Waiting for someone, especially waiting for someone for the rest of one's life, is such a difficult thing." Young Master Ding smiled faintly in self-mockery. Sikong Fuling turned to look at him, her eyes flickering slightly. What's with your expressions?" Young Master Ding retracted his gaze and looked at Mo Lian, Mu Xingqian, and the others. He laughed and said, Don't pity me." Chapter 4410. Yin rolled her eyes at him and got straight to the point. What do you think is on the island? A barrier. A barrier. It's that kind of ancient natural barrier. Ding nodded and said, there's a problem with the space. Otherwise, how could 20,000 elites disappear without a trace? That's right. Even if someone launched a sneak attack with so many people, it should be earth-shattering. Mu Xingqian nodded, deeply finding it reasonable. Yin responded with a "Immerse." He suddenly stood up and floated to Arbor's side in a flash, reaching out to support her body. His movements were light and gentle, and his phoenix eyes seemed to overflow with gentleness. Mu Xingqian rolled his eyes at his back and grumbled, "Didn't you just say not to disturb her and let her have some peace and quiet?" In the end, he floated over himself in less than a quarter of an hour. Yin naturally heard his brother-in-law's grumbling, but he was disinclined to retort. Although he was sitting here talking to Ding Yun and the others, his gaze kept drifting towards Jojo. When he saw the little fellow lying on the railing and nodding her big head, he knew she was dozing off. He hastily floated over to support her. When he looked down and saw that the little stoic was already drowsy and half awake, he couldn't resist chuckling. Mu Xingqian also hastily moved over. "Younger sister, she's been tired from the day. I'll take her to rest. Let's talk about it tomorrow." "Oh," eldest brother-in-law replied dryly. Yin lifted the little stoic up bridal style and briskly walked towards the stairs. Sikong Fuling silently glanced at them and reflexively looked at her elder brother's expression. However, she saw her elder brother's deep gaze but didn't say a word. Just as Yin reached the steps next to the stairs, he suddenly dodged to the side and lifted his leg to kick something. That thing was like a ball as it flew far away and landed softly on the table in front of Mu Xingqian. Mu Xingqian looked down and his expression abruptly changed. He stood up and summoned his sword from his conscience. "It's that dragon." "What?" Sikong Fuling jumped in fright and hastily dodged behind him. "Is it the blood-patterned black dragon that fought with the black dragon at the bottom of the sea?" That blood-patterned black dragon left a deep impression in everyone's mind. The battle between the two dragons and the might of the holy beast was still fresh in everyone's minds. Everyone looked at the dragon lying on the table in astonishment. It was as long as a forearm and as thick as a finger. It looked like a worm, completely lacking the might of a black dragon. After being kicked by Yin earlier, it was still lying limply on the ground, unable to catch its breath. Everyone was speechless as they turned to look in Yin's direction. That old man didn't even look at Shui Wenlong as he carried his chow up the stairs and left. Everyone looked sympathetically at the goods lying on the table. "Which corner did you crawl out from?" Mu Xingqian withdrew the sword in his hand, thinking that he had been too nervous just now. They'd seen this blood-patterned dragon with their own eyes. It seemed to have flown out of their little sister's inner world. Was it their little sister's personal sacred beast? "What's wrong with you?" Sikong Fuling couldn't help but ask, feeling that the little worm was a little pitiful. She raised her head and looked at the people in front of her with her watery eyes, ignoring them. Following that familiar feeling in its memory, it wriggled down to the ground and swam in the direction of Arbor. "Hungry, so hungry, master. I'm hungry." Everyone was speechless as they watched this fellow wriggle up the stairs and chase after Arbor with tears in its eyes. "See you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Chapter 4411. Sikong Fuling stared at it in astonishment for a moment before rubbing her nose. "It can't be that it's so hungry that it can only crawl, right?" Mu Xingqian glanced at her and was momentarily speechless. "Miss Sikong, you really know how to joke." Hearing that, Sikong Fuling silently glanced at Mu Xingqian and coughed awkwardly. That was true. She had indeed never heard of a holy beast being half-starved to death. This should be their misconception. "Hungry, so hungry, master. Hungry." Arbor abruptly sat up, and his movements were so large that he almost flipped off the bed. A pair of large, hazy eyes met with Yin, who was sitting at the table and looking at him. For a moment, he was at a loss and didn't know where he was. Yin couldn't help but want to laugh. She quickly walked forward, lifted her clothes, and sat down by the bed. He raised his hand to hold her small hand. "How is it? Who's calling me?" Arbor looked sternly at the crown prince and extended a finger to point in the direction of the door. Outside the door, Emolian secretly ground her teeth, but still got up as instructed. She walked to the door and raised her hand to push it open. Sure enough, a slender little thing slithered in and rushed toward its master's bed with teary eyes. "Master!" Arbor sat up cross-legged and sized up the little fellow that was climbing up. This slender little thing had vertical blood patterns carved on its back and a pair of small horns on its head. Arbor seemed to see 3 little dragons above the sparkling lake, churning and spitting fire as they spun up and down. Each of the 3 little dragons had a pair of dragon horns on their foreheads, and their blood-red bodies meandered upward. The flames they spat out were also blood-red. When the flames touched the lake, a sizzling sound was heard, and a small part of the lake water completely evaporated. "Come back! How dare you make such a fuss? So disobedient. Watch as this little ancestor draws the Fushi sword and beheads you." Arbor's gaze was distant as he looked at the thing that crawled along the bed and finally reached her knees with great difficulty. She couldn't help but let out a faint chuckle as she gently stroked the little dragon's head. It turned out that this troublesome blood-marked demonic dragon had been sealed in her inner world all this time. The snake sculpture in her inner world was not a snake sculpture. It was a blood-patterned demonic dragon. She had hatched the 3 blood-patterned demonic dragons with great difficulty. Even now, he could still remember the scene where the scarlet blood flame touched the lake water and turned it into steam. This little bit of fire could burn down mountains, rivers, sun, and moon. It was quite fierce. The little stoic's eyes rippled with gentleness, and her small hand stroked Xiaolong's head, but her thoughts drifted off somewhere. "Xiao Bao, no matter where you go, Master will definitely look after you. Time and space are not a problem. As long as you miss me, just call me. I will definitely hear you." Xiao Mu blinked lightly before looking up at Mo Yin, who had stopped in his tracks and was gazing at her. She smiled brightly, her eyes crinkling. "I'm hungry." Mo Yin quickly stepped forward and gently pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead. "What do you want to eat?" "I want to eat something sweet. Bean paste cake, pineapple jelly, coconut cup, hibiscus crisp, anything is fine." "Okay." Mo Yin reached out to support her shoulders and looked down at the blood-patterned demonic dragon circling around the little girl's legs. "I didn't expect this to be a dragon that likes to eat sweet things. Little Red can't fly when it's hungry." Arbor stroked Xiaolong's head, her voice rueful. Mo Yin raised her brows. "Little Red?" Chapter 44:12. Arbor nodded. "Speaking of which, it actually has 2 younger brothers. It's called Little Red, second brother is called Little Red, and third brother is Little Red." Prince Mo's expression was a bit indescribable. The Crown Prince glanced at Little Red sympathetically and coughed lightly. "But isn't a black dragon?" Even Little Black sounded better than Little Red. She was so feminine, just like a brothel worker who did odd jobs, but it has scarlet blood tattoos all over its body. The little girl argued with reason and glanced at the Crown Prince. "Do you think this name isn't good? I've been calling it this since a very, very long time ago." The Crown Prince immediately shook his head without any integrity. No, Jojo's name is really good." This lousy dragon didn't express any objections. It wasn't like he had nothing better to do than argue with his wife over a trivial matter. "This name is naturally good." Arbor nodded. "Just like me and my younger sister and brother. Arbor, Xiao Lin, Xiao Sun. You can tell they're blood-related siblings from the sound of it. Blood-related and inseparable. Just from a name, you can tell they're family." Yes. Prince Mo nodded helplessly. He went up to hug his wife and kissed her hard. "Wife, do you still want to drink sweet soup? Date and longan soup." The little girl's eyes brightened. The smile on Prince Mo's lips widened wantonly. When he looked down, he saw that lousy dragon's round eyes also brightening. This little expression was exactly the same as its master's. Sangzhou's Liu Pass ever since His Majesty personally arrived 3 days ago and took down the bandit leader with a single arrow, the morale of the middle army had been greatly boosted. After many days of extermination and encirclement, the bandit groups were forced to flee into the depths of the mountains and forests. Duan Yu ordered to surround the mountains and kill them one by one. "Who are you? You've been sneakily spying on us." A young man in black riding beside Duan Yu turned his head to take a look. He saw two soldiers pushing and shoving a person whose face could not be seen clearly. That person cried out, "Hey, let go, let go, let go. Quickly let go, my shoulder is about to be broken by you." When Duan Yu heard the familiar voice, he glanced to the side and raised his hand slightly. The black-clothed youth said, "Release him." The two soldiers loosened their grip and pushed the man in front of them. With a thud, Wu Ruomei's knee hit the ground heavily, causing her to grimace in pain. "Wui, send her back." Duan Yu swept her a glance before turning to leave. Wu Ruomei hurriedly shouted, "Hey, wait, wait. Your Majesty, I came here this time to report an official matter. I'm not fooling around." The black-clothed youth had already dismounted and walked to young Miss Wu's side. Just as he was about to take this troublesome young Miss Wu away, he heard her repeatedly shout, "Big matter, big matter. I have the letter can prove it." Duan Yu waved his hand and had someone present the letter in her hand. After skimming through it, his gaze landed on her deeply. "Does your father know about this matter?" Wu Ruomei scratched her head with a mischievous grin. "My father, he probably doesn't know." Duan Yu expressionlessly glanced at her. "If you don't use a messenger talisman, you'll have to run back and forth for several days and nights. By the time you tell him about this matter, it's already out of control." Wu Ruomei looked at him in bewilderment and cautiously asked, "Your Majesty already knew?" She thought she had gathered a big piece of news from the streets. Chapter 44:13. Duan Yu ignored her and turned his horse to leave. He said, "Send her back to the Prime Minister's estate." Then why hasn't His Majesty returned to the capital after such a major incident? Wu Ruomei was a bit perplexed and hastily asked. Wu Yi gruffly pulled her up. All right, you don't need to meddle in His Majesty's affairs. Why should a woman like you meddle in so many men's affairs?" Wu Ruomei pushed Wu Yi back. "So what if I'm a woman?" Wu Yi couldn't help but be amused. "Nothing if I'm a woman. It's just that you, Wu Ruomei, suddenly summoned her long sword from her conscience. Unsheath your sword. I want you to pay the price for this." The surrounding onlookers. Wu Yi twitched his mouth and rolled his eyes while crossing his arms. "I never raise a hand against women. Are you looking down on us women? Let me tell you, someone like you won't last more than 100 moves in the hands of Commandery Princess Wu Shuang." He didn't expect this eldest miss of the Prime Minister's estate to hold Commandery Princess Wu Shuang in such high esteem. This degree of blind adoration could rival that of a moron. All right, stop making a fuss. His Majesty is busy with proper business. How am I making a fuss? Wu Ruomei retorted angrily. "I came to help him suppress the bandits and deliver important news to him while I'm at it." Huh, by the time your news arrives, the incident will have already happened. Wu Yi couldn't help but laugh. He grabbed Wu Ruomei and walked towards the carriage parked at the side. He directly threw Wu Ruomei into the carriage and instructed the coachman, "Bring some people and safely escort Miss Wu back to the estate." Yes. Wu Ruomei was flustered and exasperated as she clung to the carriage frame and pounded on the wooden planks. "Hey, punk, you still haven't told me. Did His Majesty already know about the second prince's ulterior motives?" Wu Yi didn't answer her and only threw her a look that said, "Figure out yourself. Giddy up." The coachman swung his whip and jolted Wu Ruomei back into the carriage. She cursed the entire way back. "I'll still be back. Don't think of stopping my ambition to be a female general." Wu Yi couldn't help but facepalm. It was no wonder that the Prime Minister always had an indescribable look on his daughter's face when he saw her. Any father who met her would feel stifled. That night, Duan Yu led his troops to a nearby barren mountain and captured all the remaining bandits in one fell swoop. At dawn, Ing silently appeared beside him, bowed, and said, "The second prince's people have started to move." Duan Yu glanced back. Amidst the warm mist, Rows of green-clothed puppets with cold and sharp expressions stood before him. These people were the assassins that the second prince and the third prince had hired from Joe City. At that time, after being captured by his people one by one, they were all turned into puppets. Now, they could be put to good use. That third royal brother of Jean's really didn't make a move? Duan Yu's eyes flickered. He seemed to have thought of something, and his expression appeared somewhat regretful. These useless brothers of his only knew how to eat, drink, and play all day long. They were all useless, and raising them was really a waste of money. He really wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of his second and third brothers in one fell swoop. Unfortunately, his third brother usually appeared to be a rash and impetuous person, but this time he had some brains and didn't participate in this from beginning to end. He really couldn't find a good reason to capture him for any random reason. Duan Yu couldn't help but sigh. Chapter 44:14. If he didn't leave the city, how would second royal brother dare to make a move? After dilly-dallying at Luyu Pass for several days, it was time to set off for the capital. He really wanted to see what this second brother of his could do under his nose. Your Majesty, 8th young Master Qi is here. Duan Yu raised his brows and looked back. He saw an elegant and handsome man in white walking over like a gust of wind between two rows of soldiers. Following behind him was a slender woman with a white veil covering her face, revealing only a pair of beautiful eyes. Duan Yu's gaze only landed on that 8th young Master Qi and didn't notice that woman. Her pair of beautiful eyes only stared deeply at him. Greetings, Your Majesty. 8th young Master Qi Rue bowed in a very standard manner. The woman following behind him took 2 steps forward and bowed in greeting. This subject, Qi Liren, greets Your Majesty. A strategist beside Duan Yu leaned closer and whispered, "Third miss of the Qi family." Duan Yu swept that woman a non-committal glance and nodded. No need to be so courteous. 8th Qi. Duan Yu got straight to the point and asked this 7th young Master Qi, "What's the matter we asked you to consider?" 8th young Master Qi quickly bowed again. "It is my Qi family's honor to be able to take responsibility for the country. 8th Qi is willing to follow Your Majesty and serve you faithfully." Duan Yu wasn't surprised by 8th young Master Qi's attitude at all and only nodded. "Okay, in that case, you will follow us from now on." Duan Yu paused and turned to look at Qi Liren behind 8th young Master Qi. Her? 8th young Master Qi looked a bit embarrassed. When his family heard that he was coming to have an audience with His Majesty today, they insisted on shoving third sister over and insisted that he bring her along. He had already said that His Majesty was not interested in this kind of thing, but that unreliable father of his still insisted that he bring third sister along. He couldn't find any other excuse at this time. Third sister is the most talented person in our Qi family. 8th young Master Qi smiled awkwardly. To outsiders, everyone only knows that my talisman skills are outstanding, but third sister is actually slightly better than me. At this point, even a fool would understand that the Qi family still wanted this third miss to stay by His Majesty's side. Duan Yu's expression was aloof as he shook his head. Third Miss Qi has the heart to serve the country, which is commendable. There is a difference between men and women. I do not need a woman to follow me for the time being. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. Qi Liren was stunned, but she wasn't angry. She said slowly, "I heard that Your Majesty has a female physician with superb medical skills by your side. Her name is Tu Xiuxiu." 8th young Master Qi quickly turned his head and winked at the third miss, Qi Liren. Third elder sister's words were like a slap to His Majesty's face. His Majesty had just said that he would not have any female attendants by his side, and now he was slapped in the face by Qi Liren. Duan Yu glanced at 8th young Master Qi. Physician 2 is married. Everyone was speechless. What did that mean? Does His Majesty discriminate against unmarried women? However, Duan Yu recalled that day at the foot of Mount Daxing, when Physician 2 knelt in front of him and said, Tu Xiuxiu only wishes to have the opportunity to come into contact with people from the military and investigate her husband who disappeared from the military 6 years ago. Whether he lived or died, Tu Xiuxiu only wanted to know the final result so that she could be at ease. Could Tu Xiuxiu be the same as other women? Of course, she was different. Duan Yu didn't say anything else and turned to order, return to the capital. Qi Liren took 2 steps forward and shouted at his departing figure, I will make you see me in a different light. Chapter 44:15. The boat docked on the shore, and everyone followed closely, stepping onto the beach covered in a thick layer of snow. Arbor casually put away scarlet firmament waves and looked around. It was a vast and empty island. At a glance, it was completely barren. It felt as if one could see the end of it with a single glance. This area of barren islands was connected to the sacred land of the snowy mountains, and they all had the same landscape. Due to the low temperature, the island was practically barren, and it was a vast expanse of whiteness everywhere. The snow creaked when they stepped on it. The closer they got to the center of the island, the heavier the snow became. Everyone followed the little girl closely and gradually discovered that the little stoic was forcefully leaving 2 rows of small footprints, as if she was walking very happily. This was truly too obvious. Everyone's cultivation was able to walk on snow without leaving a trace. Yet this fellow purposely left a small hole with each step, trying to pull her calf out of the snow pit. Sinking it again, pulling out again, young Sir Ding couldn't resist chuckling. Could it be that you didn't play with snowmen when you were young? The little stoic ignored him and continued walking on her own path, 1 step at a time. Her small hand lifted her skirt several inches, leaving a small footprint with each step, and she continued walking forward. When she was young, her sect was covered in snow all year round. Murong Sun held her hand as they walked on the snowy mountains, leaving behind 2 rows of footprints. The little stoic chased after her footprints and forcefully stepped on them. When everyone saw that she was having so much fun by herself, their childlike instincts involuntarily arose, and they followed the little stoic's footsteps everywhere. Before long, they trampled the pure white snow into a mess, leaving behind footprints everywhere. The little stoic suddenly stopped and turned around to ask, why isn't there a trace of human habitation when 20,000 people are gathered here? 20,000 people wasn't a small number. Even if they were all experts with cultivations above the 12th level of the spiritual realm, it would be fine if they walked on the snow without leaving a trace, but it was impossible for 20,000 people to walk without leaving a trace, right? Young Sir Ding smiled and slowly walked forward while stepping on the snow. Follow me. The little stoic raised her foot and hesitated for less than a second before following closely. She glanced at young Sir Ding. You really lived here when you were young? I've never lied to you. Ding Yin turned his head and gazed deeply at her. Arbor snorted and jumped forward. You were so small back then. How could you survive on a deserted island like this? Have you eaten sea fish before? Young Master Ding turned his head and asked. It's fishy, bland, tasteless. I ate it for 3 years. Xiaomo abruptly looked at him, and her heart shuddered. This Ding Xian was truly a lunatic. It was one thing for her to suffer, but why did she have to drag her own son into it? This woman really didn't know how to dote on her son. I was 4 years old then. It tastes terrible. Ding Yin turned to look at her again and smiled devilishly. Sigh, it wasn't until I was 7 that I realized that in this world, there's so many things that are more delicious than sea fish. The little stoic halted her steps. You? I live on this island. Something like that. Ding Yin shrugged. I don't remember clearly. The deserted islands here were all the same. There's snow everywhere, weeds and withered vines everywhere. You? The little stoic looked like she wanted to say something, but in the end, she glanced at him and didn't speak again. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and Prince Mo walked side by side and followed behind them from a distance. Everyone was a cultivation expert, so even though they were separated by a certain distance, they could hear everything very clearly. Do you want to ask me if I hate long Chuyu? Chapter 44:16. Arbor stole a glance at him with a serious expression on his little face. He did not reveal his gossip-loving Joe character at all. His little face was serious, indicating that it was up to him to say it or not. Young Master Ding walked forward slowly, a smile on his lips. It would be a lie if I said I didn't hate him. It's just that I thought I hated him very much. Who would have thought that when I saw him again, he shrugged helplessly? It seems like that's all there is to it. You're right. I feel nothing. That's how I feel when I see Long Chuyu. Not feeling anything is the greatest feeling. Arbor glanced sideways at young Master Ding, wanting to say something, but hesitating. Why? Are you trying to comfort me? Arbor rolled his eyes coldly at him. You're thinking too much. He took a step forward and stomped his foot down, creating a small hole in the ground. The venerable peach blossom immortal waved his little golden fan and smiled faintly. Everyone has their own story. Jojo loves to listen to stories. It's really not a good habit. With her curious nature, she would be abducted by someone sooner or later. Mo Lien glanced sideways at him. What are you trying to say? The venerable peach blossom immortal gestured with his chin at her and glanced at young Master Ding in front. Jojo wants to talk to him. Then let's talk. The venerable peach blossom immortal snorted. You're really generous. She knows what she's doing. The venerable peach blossom immortal could not help but roll his eyes. He continued to slander her. Unfortunately, we don't know if others know what they're doing. Mo Lien glanced sideways at him. A ruthless little Mo Lien jumped out of her heart. She used the hammer in her hand, as if she was playing whack-a-mole. Thump, 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 thump. She hammered 18 times in a row. She hammered Eldest Qin, Omega Katoku, Dingyun, Mingyasi, Yuan Shichin, Feng Changqing, and a bunch of other people who kept popping out of the pit. Especially the Feng clansmen who had been indoctrinated by Feng Hepping into the concept of boy toys. Mo Lien held a small hammer and hammered Feng Changqing and Feng Changfei's 2 big heads. Who asked you to marry Jojo? I'll beat you to death. Beat you to death. When the venerable peach blossom immortal saw that he did not speak, he could not help but cast a sideways glance at him, only to see him staring at him with a strange expression. What's with that look? Mo Lien turned her head without a word and walked away. After taking a few steps, she couldn't help but cover her face with her hand. How could he have such a strange and childish idea? Wait, why did it feel like something was missing from the gopher hole? Husband, Peach Blossom. Arbor suddenly turned around and waved at them. There seems to be a boundary here. We can't pass through it. Be careful. There's something strange about the space on this island. Mo Lien and He Chun floated in her direction one after the other. Suddenly, they saw the layer of snow under the little stoic's feet abruptly collapse, and she instantly plummeted downwards. Young Master Ding, who was standing closest to her, subconsciously reached out to grab her wrist, trying to pull her up. However, Jojo's speed of descent was too fast, so he grabbed empty air. Anxious, he jumped down without thinking. Jojo, Mo Lien and He Chun were both alarmed. Oh no, there seems to be a spatial formation here. Feng Changqing cried out in alarm. Everyone, be careful. Just as he finished speaking, a few people suddenly fell into the snow hole on the ground. Miss Sikong. Mu Xingqian turned around and saw that Sikong Fulling's feet had loosened. Just as she was about to rise into the air, everyone saw a withered vine shoot out from the ground and coil around her feet. Mu Xingqian reached out to grab her arm. Abruptly, he felt an irresistible force, and he also plummeted downwards with Sikong Fulling. Chapter 44:17. Xiaomu knew that things were bad, but before she could break free and fly up, she felt an extremely majestic force dragging her small body down the entire way. As soon as she fell, she knew that there was indeed something wrong with this space. In reality, she didn't fall into any snow pit. She was probably pulled in by the mutated space here. The deserted island near the Snow Ridge Holy Land should be filled with natural space barriers and traps, as Dingyun said. Qiuqiu, what will happen if I hide in the star domain now? Master Silver, why don't you hide in here and eat something before continuing to fall? Arbor chuckled with a fake smile. Was Qiuqiu not joking? But it was true. There was no use hiding in there now. She would still appear where she went in. If she wanted to fall, she had to continue falling. Therefore, there were many things that were useless to hide. She still had to face what she had to face. Based on your guess, how long more will I fall? I don't know, Master. The tree man who was watching the show had a large basin of pills in front of him and was throwing them into his mouth. To be honest, the little tree man didn't feel anxious at all. After all, she was his master. She was already a peak level 5 God Realm cultivator. How could she be troubled by such a small matter? While munching, Chocho said, Master, don't worry. You'll fall to your destination eventually. Pay attention to your defense. Open your defensive barrier. If it doesn't work, I'll set up a wood spiritual barrier for you. Master and Silver will protect you. Go, 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 Master, go. Arbor. She really didn't want to talk to it right now. Arbor waved her finger. Several defensive talismans floated around her and instantly formed a small defensive talisman formation around her. She continued to fall, but she could feel that the speed of her fall seemed to have weakened a lot. Master, young Master Ding also jumped down with you just now. Chocho didn't mind watching the show and gloated. It's a pity that this space is very strange. As soon as he jumped down, he seemed to have been led astray into another passage. Arbor ignored it. She felt that she had fallen for a quarter of an hour before she saw a ray of light below. She took out a gravity talisman and slapped it on herself. Xiao Mu's body sank in midair, and when she looked down, she saw a stretch of jade-colored grass below her. The wind blew the grass and leaves, and everything was green. Stepping on the soft grass, Arbor pursed his lips and remained silent for a while. Then he stretched out his fingers again and stuck a few defensive talismans on himself. Master Silver, do you feel unwell? Arbor raised his hand and summoned an ordinary spiritual sword from his inner world. He gently stirred the grass in front of him and walked forward expressionlessly. He didn't feel any discomfort, but he felt discomfort everywhere. It was very likely that the scene of green grass in front of him was just an illusion. Perhaps, wherever she walked, there would be mountains of corpses and seas of blood out of caution. The little stoic was willing to wrap herself in several layers of defensive barriers. She didn't want her skin to come into contact with anything around her. Master, do you want Chocho to come out and accompany you? Arbor was silent for a while before he said, No need. All right, then Chocho will cook noodles for Master. If Master is hungry later, you can come in and eat. Arbor thought about it and nodded. Okay. She knew that Master would definitely pay attention to her when it came to food. Chapter 44:18. Chocho jumped down happily, then turned around and went to work. Xiaomu walked for about half an hour in this expanse of lush green grass before finally stopping. Looking back, everything was still filled with an emerald color. Turning around and looking forward, the fragrant grass stretched to the heavens and the earth, as if there was no end in sight. Arbor leaped into the air and looked into the distance, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. As far as her eyes could see, there was still green grass. There seemed to be nothing out of the ordinary. She landed on the ground and sat cross-legged, her beautiful brows furrowed slightly. Right now, the situation was like a turtle trapped in a jar. It was as if it was completely trapped within the spatial barrier. However, she did not know where this domain was, and for the time being, she could not find a way to break this barrier. Arbor looked up at the sky. There were no clouds in the sky, and it was a clear blue. Who would have thought that they would be able to see such pure blue light in a domain like this? Since she was already here, Arbor was not in a hurry. She waved her hand and brought out the bowl of vegetables and meat noodles that Chocho had cooked. Master, do you have any plans after finishing this bowl of noodles? Why don't you let Chocho try and see if it can break this barrier? Arbor slowly picked up her chopsticks and put it into her mouth expressionlessly. She did not say anything. Chocho was familiar with her personality. When she was thinking, she did not like to respond to anyone. Thus, she said to herself, Just now, the great crown prince and his excellency, Hichin, contacted me, but I could not drag them indirectly. This shows that the surrounding space is very strange. The people who seem to be around us may be separated by thousands of mountains and oceans. Xiao Mu was sitting on a small, sparkling golden stool. She held her bowl of noodles in her hands and ate mouthful by mouthful. "Master?" Arbor raised her head slightly, only to see the scenery in front of her wavering slightly. Two tall and straight figures appeared in the air in front of her. Looking at the situation, the two of them were walking in a cave. On the stone wall, there were a few twisting black snakes with scarlet eyes that slowly slithered down the wall. Suddenly, one of the snakes shot out. The venerable peach blossom immortal glanced at it from the corner of his eyes. With a flick of his finger, a stream of energy pierced through the snake's head and split it into two. Soon after, the shadow faded away. Like water ripples, it slowly rippled. Arbor's chopsticks paused for a moment before she continued eating her noodles. After finishing the broth, she tossed the empty bowl to Chio-Chio. "Master, master, the crown prince is with the peach blossom immortal venerable. You don't have to worry," Arbor said expressionlessly. "When have I ever worried about them? Then why didn't you say anything earlier?" Chio-Chio said, feeling wronged. She thought that her master was in a bad mood because she was separated from the crown prince and was worried about her husband. "That's because you are too noisy. I don't want to talk to you," Arbor said bluntly. Chio-Chio was immediately speechless. Could it be? Was it being despised by its little master? Arbor put away the small golden stool she had prepared and stood up. She patted the non-existent dust off her clothes. The defense talisman array covering her body was faintly discernible, its talisman power seemingly about to dissipate. Arbor did not hesitate to slap a few more defense talismans on herself and walked forward. "I don't know when this will end," Chio-Chio said softly. Chio-Chio said in a small voice, "Master, why don't we burn all the grass here and see? Can you burn this area?" Arbor said indifferently, "We don't even know how big this place is." Chapter 44:19. What should I do if my power runs out after burning halfway? Feeling stifled, Chio-Chio shut its mouth. A moment later, it said, Then what should we do, master? We'll take it one step at a time." Xiao Mu indifferently looked ahead. With a flick of her sleeve, a large swarm of poison-tailed butterflies flowed out from between her fingers and scattered in all directions. At the same time, Mo Lien and Yuan Shichen were also standing in the cave, gazing with deep eyes at the phantom that appeared in midair for an instant and then disappeared immediately. They watched as Arbor released a swarm of poison-tailed butterflies to search for the barrier. The two of them exchanged a look. "What do you think is strange about this space?" "Everything is strange." Yuan Shichen put away his little golden fan and turned to wink at Mo Lien. But the way Jojo expressionlessly ate noodles just now was so interesting. Mo Lien stepped forward without another word, not even bothering to roll her eyes at him. "Your sister is really a weirdo." Sikong Fulling held a meat bun in one hand and fiercely tore into it. "She often carries hot soup and hot noodles in her personal inner world. She doesn't forget to bring enough food when she comes out for training." Sikong Fulling was currently sitting cross-legged on a round log and chewing hard on the meat bun in her mouth. "Compared to my sister, I think you're also quite a weirdo." Mu Xingqian stood on the other end of the log and gazed at the bubbling blood pool around them. "You can actually eat a meat bun in this kind of blood pool and sea of corpses? If you're not a weirdo, then what are you?" "Huh." Sikong Fulling directly swept away a withered white claw that was clinging to the log with the hilt of her sword. "How am I a weirdo?" She looked down at the bun in her hand. "What do you think these surroundings are?" "I'm telling you, they're all illusions. The smell of rotting corpses you smell, and the blood pool and sea of corpses you see before you actually don't exist. To put it bluntly, this space is just for us to imagine for ourselves. Whatever you imagine will appear around you. In addition, you saw that expressionless face just now because you were thinking about her. That's why she appeared in front of us. In fact, she is isolated in another sealed space, which may be thousands of miles away from here." As he spoke, bubbles suddenly appeared in the blood pool. Suddenly, a few blood crocodiles with their mouths wide open jumped out and bit at the logs under their feet. Mu Xingqian was startled. His long sword flew out from his conscience with a whoosh and immediately chopped off the head of a blood crocodile. Seacone Fulling's attack was not weak either. In a flash, she stabbed the other blood crocodile back into the pool of blood that was seething with flowers of blood. "My mother," Seacone Fulling wailed. Mu Xingchen couldn't help but roll his eyes. "So may I ask, Miss Seacone, what exactly were you thinking when you came in here?" He had already said that the surrounding environment was an illusion created by his imagination. Why couldn't he control his unrestrained thoughts? My heavens, Seacone Fulling exclaimed. "In all honesty, I didn't think of anything at all. I really wasn't thinking of anything just now." Seacone Fulling suddenly felt her hair stand on end. She turned her head in unison with Mu Xingchen and saw a sinister dragon head emerge from the rippling pool of blood. Mu Xingchen exclaimed in shock, You, why are you thinking of that black dragon again?" Chapter 44:20. I wasn't thinking about that black dragon. Seacone Fulling complained incessantly, her face already scrunched up into a ball. She fiercely slapped the back of her head, wishing for nothing more than to slap herself. "Who told you to run your mouth off and let your thoughts run wild and wanton? Why did you think of that dragon in that damn stoic face's dream?" This fellow recalled in horror that she indeed rejoiced for a split second in her heart just now. Thank goodness, it was only a few blood crocodiles that weren't too big or too small, and not that violent black dragon in that Sundara little stoic's dream. In the end, she seemed to have met a tragic end right away. Hurry and paddle Mu Xingchen." Seacone Fulling couldn't care that much anymore and directly used her longsword as an oar to paddle the bloody water in the pool. However, the log seemed to have suddenly lost control and kept spinning back and forth in the center of the bloody water. Mu Xingchen lifted her up, kicked the log aside, and fled in the air. "Hurry and recall that black dragon in your head. Are you stupid, Mu Xingchen?" Seacone Fulling was so angry that she repeatedly kicked her legs while being carried in his hand. She shouted angrily, "Don't tell me you don't know? Summoned things can't disappear unless it's destroyed." Roar. That pitch-black and extremely malevolent black dragon finally burrowed out of the bloody pool. It leaped into the air and chased after the two of them. "Think of something good." Mu Xingchen couldn't resist roaring. Defensive shield." Seacone Fulling's mind was a mess when she saw that black dragon snaking its way up and chasing after them, and she suddenly shouted. The black dragon bit down on the defensive wall in front of the two of them, immediately crushing it into powder. Why is this defensive shield so unreliable? Seacone Fulling hugged Mu Xingchen's arm and exclaimed in astonishment. "Because this isn't a defensive shield you summoned at all," Mu Xingchen said helplessly. "This was merely a defensive boundary he set up, so it naturally couldn't withstand a single blow from a holy beast." "I understand." Mu Xingchen pulled her up and shouted, "Hurry and run." Apart from summoning things that harm others and themselves, this godforsaken place seemed to be unable to summon anything good. Even if you want to think positively now, there's no way to realize it. On the contrary, Mu Xingchen hurriedly stopped his surging thoughts and shuddered violently. He almost blurted out something again. "Mu Xingchen." Seacone Fulling staggered in midair and nearly fell into the blood-colored pool. Mu Xingchen hurriedly reached out to grab her. When he looked back, he saw Black Dragon chasing after them with a roar. "Let's go." Xiao Mu paused in her steps and suddenly looked back. There was a patch of fragrant grass, and it was as if nothing had appeared. She turned around and took 2 more steps. Suddenly, the sound of a spirit sword leaving its scabbard rang out. The spirit sword in his hand stabbed backwards at an extremely fast speed, bringing out a figure that fell to the ground with a plop. The little stoic expressionlessly turned around to look. That thing slowly arched up, and the bones all over its body creaked. His head slowly rotated in a 360-degree circle before facing Xiao Mu head-on, and his pair of dead fish eyes rolled upward. Gah! That thing suddenly let out an ear-piercing shriek and shot toward Arbor with abnormally swift and violent movements. At the same time, the surrounding grass rustled as if countless zombies were crawling out and gathering. Chapter 44:21. In the blink of an eye, Arbor's hand shook, and a thin piece of paper flew out from her conscious. It slowly unfolded like a painting scroll, slowly opening up. Light flowed out, and the painting displayed the mountains, rivers, sun, and moon with their current cultivation. The TNG treasure blueprint could already open up the 10th layer of the attack. Thousands of streams of light flowed out of this tiny blueprint, turning into specks of gravel that emitted a lustrous white light. They shot out in all directions. A moment later, Arbor looked at the already quiet air around her and silently put the TNG treasure blueprint back into her conscious. Chio, I was just wondering if there would be corpse puppets here. In the end, Master Silver, this place can't be the legendary realm of misfortune, right? Realm of misfortune? Chio simply flew out of the star domain and climbed onto Arbor's shoulder, dancing with joy as it said, "Legend has it that in the realm of misfortune, all fantasies will come true." The little treant climbed onto her shoulder and looked around. But generally speaking, after entering the realm of misfortune, everything you see before you is an extremely terrifying place. Master was indeed quite a weirdo. From the moment she entered until now, apart from the batch of corpse puppets she had imagined, which the TNG treasure blueprint took care of in a matter of minutes, she really did not encounter any other dangers. Moreover, in front of her, the sky was clear and green. No wonder it did not associate this place with the realm of misfortune at first. How can we leave this realm of misfortune? Arbor asked straightforwardly. Since the little treant knew what the hell this place was, it should have a way to deal with it. Chio scratched its head and giggled. It's extremely difficult for others to get out. But if Master wants to get out, it's really too easy. Speak. Master, you can refine this realm of misfortune. Arbor's eyes flickered. Is that really possible? Yes, of course it's possible. Chio nodded with a grin. Once Master refines it, the space barrier here will immediately be broken. At that time, everyone will fall out of the realm of misfortune. Arbor nodded, not fully understanding. Judging from Chio's words, Jojo's Lotus, Yu Jiechin, and the others should have also entered the realm of misfortune, but they were separated by this mystic realm. If the secret realm was refined, they would naturally be released. Without saying a word, Arbor waved his hand and laid out a blanket. He sat down cross-legged and slowly closed his eyes. Divine power from all directions gathered toward her and quickly enveloped her entire body. This wasn't Arbor's first time refining a mystic realm. This level of refining was already a walk in the park for her. As such, he quickly got into the zone right from the start. Even Chio was a little taken aback. Master Silver was so formidable. Previously, when refining the mystic realm, there had been at least a period of preparation. But now he did not need to expend any effort at all and directly started. At this moment, young Master Ding was standing on an abandoned hill with a frown, looking up at the mirage in the starry sky. He did not know what the little fellow was doing. A large wave of corpse puppets had been destroyed by the TNG treasure blueprint just like that. Now, she was sitting on the ground as if nothing had happened. Was it because she had overused the divine power she had injected into the TNG treasure blueprint just now? Young Master Ding could not figure it out no matter how much he thought about it. He realized that the mirage in front of him was slowly disappearing. Chapter 44:22. What's Jojo doing? Yuan Shichun pulled out his sword from the wall and turned to look at Lien, who was studying the illusion carefully. This place was really strange. It did not allow them to meet Jojo, but it allowed them to see Jojo's movements from time to time. It made them itch and annoyed. Lien was silent for a long time. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal walked over impatiently and pushed him. What's wrong? We'll probably meet Jojo soon. Oh, Yuan Shichun's interest was immediately piqued. They had been walking back and forth in this dark and gloomy cave for a few hours. It was the same path, the same scenery. They had already killed 3 snake kings that were as thick as bowls, but they still could not find a way out. However, each snake king was stronger than the last. Can you stop letting your imagination run wild? Rain your thoughts. Yin looked at him helplessly. Why do you keep thinking about snakes and snake kings? Can't you think about scorpions and centipedes? As Yin said this, he suddenly realized something. He slowly turned his head and met Rotten Peach Blossom's eyes. The two of them quickly turned their heads and saw a large number of centipedes and scorpions climbing down from the wall. Without another word, they broke into a run. Their slender figures flashed through the cave like lightning. Fuck! The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal could not help but curse. Yin, are you a pig? You told me not to think nonsense. What are you thinking about? Can't you think about 17 or 18 Jojo? Jojo hugging a gold brick. Jojo hugging a jade pearl. Do you think it's a perfect picture? There's no use thinking about it. There's nothing beautiful in this place of misfortune. Would it conjure up 17 or 18 cute Jajas? Dream on. So why don't you think about centipedes and scorpions? Why don't you think about an 8-horned centipede king that broke out of the wall? Boom! The cave in front of them collapsed. The shadow of a black and white behemoth crawled out of the crack in the wall. Yin felt her scalp go numb. She slapped the black line of fire away and scolded. You're the pig. Ma Shichan wished he could bite off his own tongue. Mu Xingqian, I'm telling you, block it. Block it. Sikong Fuling clutched her bloody arm and widened her eyes in horror as she stared at the big black dragon spewing lightning across from them. If you do that again, I'm telling you, I'm done for. It's over. If it were any other time, Sikong Fuling's rippling voice would certainly make people laugh. But now, they really didn't have the energy to laugh, and the two simply couldn't cry. If I die, then so be it. Mu Xingqian closed his eyes and took out 17 to 18 divine power beads from his inner world. Wait. Could it drop? Will it affect us? What's going on, Mu Xingqian? Did you notice that the ground is shaking? No, that's not right. It seems like the entire space is shaking and shattering. Mu Xingqian grabbed Sikong Fuling and leaped backward. He was about to throw out the divine power beads in his hand when he saw the black dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws in midair. It seemed to be bound by something as it roared and rolled in the air. The dragon's entire body was tightly constricted in a whirlwind, as though it was being sucked away by some demon-subduing spirit weapon. It turned into a cloud of dust and disappeared before their eyes. The sound of something shattering could be heard. The two of them looked at each other and screamed as their bodies fell down. Arbor caught a pitch-black round heart of misfortune when he heard a chuckle behind him. Jojo. Chapter 44-23. Arbor turned to look and could not help but frown. Why was it him? Young Master Ding was dressed in a light blue robe that was spotless. He looked rather elegant and at ease. It seemed that the realm of misfortune did not cause him any trouble. This guy did not look disheveled at all. What a coincidence, Jojo. Arbor did not say anything. She only glanced at him from the corner of her eyes, then looked around. At this time, they were stepping on wet and gloomy water, and the walls were damp rocks. This was an underground karst cave. A faint light shone from the end, looking purple and yellow. Dingyan walked slowly to her side and said casually, Jojo, it seems that we have to walk inside to find out what happened. That realm of misfortune was so strange. It's not strange to say that it swallowed 20,000 people. Although Arbor did not say anything, she agreed with young Master Ding's view. Seeing that she did not speak, Ding Yun's expression was calm, and he was not angry. He smiled and said, This place is very narrow. We can see a thing or two at a glance. Why don't we walk forward together? Maybe there's a wider area, and we can find traces of people. This underground cave is very big. Be careful. Xiao Mu reluctantly gave him an unsightly look before nodding. With one foot higher than the other, Xiao Mu felt uncomfortable everywhere as she treaded on the cold, damp water as she advanced. Fortunately, she had changed into a pair of thick boots before she left. Otherwise, her feet would be soaked and she would feel even more uncomfortable. The further they walked, the wider the area before them became. This karst cave looked very deep. There were stalactites of different shapes hanging from the ceiling. Some of them were especially sharp. When Ding Yun walked over, he almost accidentally tore his sleeve. In such a dark and damp place, Arbor had goosebumps all the way. She hated this kind of gloomy and cold environment the most. It made her have a trace of bad memories. The dungeon was just this dark and damp. There was also a lingering stench in the air. "Jojo, do you want to rest for a while?" Ding Yun stopped and turned back to look at her. The little girl seemed to hate this place. He could tell from her expression of disdain. Rest? It was wet everywhere. Who would want to rest in such a damn place? Arbor shook his head. "Let's go." Young Master Ding nodded and continued forward with her. After walking for a short distance, he saw a black shadow flashing at the end of the cave. Then it disappeared without a trace. Ding Yun stopped and turned to look at the expressionless Arbor. "There seems to be something." Jojo silently slapped a few more defensive talismans on her body and opened her eggshell defensive artifact. That's right, this eggshell-like spiritual weapon had been improved by Prince Emon not long ago. Now, not only was it more durable and sturdy, the amount of divine power needed to use this defensive divine weapon was also greatly reduced. Ding Yun turned back to look at her. He suppressed the smile that slipped to his lips and coughed lightly. "Don't worry. Someone is probably just pretending to be mysterious." Arbor gave him a "I seem to be worried" look and silently clenched the spiritual sword in his hand. The two walked forward for less than a quarter of an hour. The sound of flowing water entered their ears. A black shadow suddenly slid down from the pitch-black stone wall and quickly pounced on the two of them. Ding Yun immediately stepped in front of Arbor and grabbed the other's shoulder with lightning speed. The moment he touched her, he felt a bone-chilling coldness freeze his fingers. Chapter 44-24. Immediately, he channeled a trace of Wood's spiritual energy and slapped the person's chest. With a crack sound, the thing's head seemed to droop, as if it had been fractured. If it was an ordinary person, they would be finished immediately after being slapped by young Master Ding, and would not be able to do anything else. However, it was obvious that the thing in front of them was not an ordinary person. A series of bone-cracking sounds could be heard, and in the dark and silent cave, it was somewhat hair-raising. The black shadow with its drooping head slowly raised its head, and two clusters of green the wisps appeared in its eyes. When it shone in the dark cave, Arbor immediately averted her eyes in disgust. Suddenly, a hand reached for her shoulder and grabbed at her through the defensive barrier, but it was quickly rebounded by the defensive light. That person seemed to be in pain from the rebound, and cursed out loud. "Stupid girl, look carefully before you hit me." Xiao Mu turned around for a glance, her brows knitting together. "Why is it you? Why can't it be me?" That person rolled his eyes at her in annoyance, then looked behind her, and his expression changed. "Come with me quickly." He turned and rushed into the stone wall beside them, disappearing in an instant. Arbor was surprised. It seemed that there were stone walls all around them, and they looked quite sturdy, but she did not expect that guy to pass through in an instant. "Jojo, let's go." Ding Yun called out to her. Arbor came back to her senses, and the sound of wind brushed past her ears. She instantly looked up. She saw a dense mass of 30 to 40 ghostly things with flickering eyes on the stone wall, one after another. Some were hanging on the stalactites, while others were lying on the ceiling of the cave. Suddenly, they let out strange howls, climbed down from above, and pounced on them. The two of them made a prompt decision and threw themselves into the stone wall beside them, and passed through it in a flash. The scene in front of them stunned everyone. They saw tens of thousands of people sitting in a spacious place that looked like a drill ground. If it were not for the dark surroundings and the dripping of water from the stone walls, Arbor would have almost thought that they were in a martial arts drill ground. In front of them were rows upon rows of silent soldiers. All of a sudden, their eyes swept over the two of them. Arbor and Ding Yun both crashed into this large military field. Their very sudden appearance naturally attracted a lot of attention. Everyone was sizing them up, and They were naturally sizing them up as well. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. The soldiers sitting in a row had their hair tied into a braid. They wore black jackets and knee-length fur skirts. Their attire was so unique that it was naturally the special taste of the people of the underworld region. "Why are you here again?" Akir had just opened her mouth to retort when Yasi, who was standing beside her, swept a glance over her. "Shut up." Ollie rubbed his wrist that hurt from the defensive block and grumbled repeatedly. "Eldest brother, you don't know, but when I went out to bring them in just now, my hand was shaken by the little stoic's defensive light." "Why did you go and grab her for no reason?" Minya said indifferently. "You're asking for trouble." It wasn't his first time coming into contact with this stoic face. You should know what kind of person she was, right? She was a little hedgehog that pricked anyone who touched her. Ollie was indignant. He pursed his lips and snorted, grumbling, "Isn't it all to remind her?" Minya's face was stern as he strode to Arbor. "Long time no see." Chapter 44-25. Sir Jojo swept an expressionless glance over them. His pitch-black eyes looked around with a spirited expression. Many people were squeezed together. There were at least 10,000 people in the entire large field. "You guys?" Ming Yasi followed her gaze and looked around. "We were originally planning to gather here and rest for a while before informing you." Indeed, this place wasn't far from the Lishan Island they'd originally booked. Most importantly, it was difficult to sail the ship due to the fierce winds and torrential rain that day. Ollie pursed his lips. "Big Brother said that we should take shelter on the island." Ming Yasi nodded slightly in silence. Arbor was rather surprised. She'd received news that 20,000 people from the Divine Prefecture and Tsang Prefecture had arrived on the island. She hadn't expected that the Dar Prefecture army had already arrived. "How long ago?" "We've been trapped here for at least 5 days," Ming Yasi said with certainty. After they'd been trapped, he'd been instructing people to keep track of the time, so he was well aware of the passage of time. Xiao Mu creased her brows upon hearing this. This meant that Ming Yasi's group had arrived earlier than the elites from the Divine Prefecture and Tsang Prefecture. But didn't they find it strange? Arbor glanced over. "Why must we rest on this deserted island?" Ming Yasi's expression froze. He thought back to that day and said in a low voice, "That day, the winds were fierce and torrential. A few ships just happened to run aground." When he said this, he also felt that this matter was rather coincidental. He was an intelligent person to begin with, so he immediately understood some things. "Jojo, you mean that someone deliberately set up a formation in the water to lure us onto the island?" Arbor nodded. Wasn't this already very obvious? When she'd come to the River of Forgetfulness with Long Shi's group, they'd also passed through this waterway, but nothing had happened to them then. There's a natural realm of misfortune on this island. Have you encountered it before? Of course not. Otherwise, these people wouldn't still be in such a neat and tidy state. Although these soldiers were all experts above the 12th level of the spirit realm, most of them probably wouldn't be able to escape unscathed in the realm of misfortune. Arbor looked up at Ming Yasi when she thought of this. As expected, Ming Yasi looked at her and shook his head. "Realm of misfortune? Never." "Oh," the little stoic replied faintly. Everyone's gazes simultaneously looked towards the little stoic's expressionless face. Why did he suddenly feel that the air was a little quieter, as if there was nothing to say? Could it be an illusion? The soldiers looked at each other, then silently shifted their gazes to His Highness Myas. Ollie couldn't help but chuckle. "What realm of misfortune? You make it sound so mysterious. In any case, we've never met them." "What's wrong? Did you fall into the secret realm?" Young Master Ding smiled and nodded elegantly. "We did fall in, but Jojo quickly fished us out." Ming Yasi creased his brows and approached the little stoic. "Come here." Xiaomu straightforwardly took a step back. Everyone's gazes instantly landed on her. There were very few women who dared to be so impudent in front of His Highness. Young Master Ding also stepped forward to block her and said with a smile, "Ming Province's Crown Prince, the most important thing we should do right now is to immediately discuss a strategy to leave this place." Ming Yasi's cold gaze swept over young Master Ding. "Move aside." Chapter 4426. I don't need you to remind me. This highness naturally knows what's most important. Ming Yasi glanced coldly at Ding Yun. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Akir's cry of alarm from the other end. Brother! She staggered over as if possessed by a sickly beauty. She clutched her chest with one hand and fell towards Ming Yasi in a panic. Ming Yasi's body movements were honest, and he very swiftly shifted his position to the side to avoid her fall. Seeing Akir fall head first onto the ground with a cry, Ali hastily reached out to support her. He then called out, Akir, what's wrong with you? Young Master Ding turned to look and just happened to see the little stoic's taut face. She rolled her pitch-black eyes, a faint disdain showing on her face. This little expression was truly so vivid that it made people feel that this stoic face suddenly radiated with a bit of brilliance. Poison, poison. Akir's face flushed red, and she cast a sidelong glance in Arbor's direction. As a result, the surrounding soldiers, as well as young Master Ding and Ming Yasi, naturally focused their gazes on the little stoic again. Everyone knew that this stoic face was an extremely outstanding pill talisman master. Miss Akir's pained expression couldn't have been that this stoic face had secretly attacked her as soon as she came in, right? Who knew that the little stoic would expressionlessly glance at Akir? Don't you know how to act too much? Ming Yasi also reprimanded with a sullen face. Stop fooling around. Quickly stand up straight. Akir clutched her collar with one hand, crumpling it. She turned to Ming Yasi with a pained expression and asked, Brother, you believe outsiders and not me? Aye, wah. As she spoke, Akir suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, and everyone's gazes instantly changed. Ali grabbed Akir's arm especially agitatedly and glared at the little stoic. What's wrong with you? Are you looking for trouble as soon as you arrived? I specifically went out to lure you guys here to take refuge, but you avoided trouble? The little stoic was silent and didn't say anything. Akir whined and wept. On the other hand, Ming Yasi glared at his younger brother with extreme impatience. Can you grow a brain? Don't lose your wits just because a woman cries with a few words. How can I let you manage the Wu Zhong army in the future? Ali was instantly rendered speechless by his brother's scolding. He could only stammer, Be but Akir. She looks very uncomfortable. The two of them were so far apart. How could she poison him? Do you think you can poison her alone when there are so many of us here? Ming Yas scolded in annoyance. Scram to the side. Ali thought about it and agreed. His face alternated between green and white as he cast a sidelong glance at Arbor. He was about to help Akir to the side. Unexpectedly, Akir's body trembled violently as though all the hair on her body was about to fall off. She spat out another mouthful of blood. How could the surrounding soldiers still sit still? They all stood up and stared at Ding Yun and Arbor with vigilance. Young Master Ding grinned and reached out to block Jojo. His expression was calm as he cast a glance in Yasi's direction. Isn't it interesting? Ming Yasi's handsome face darkened as he stared coldly at the smiling man in front of him. You did it. Ding Yun tilted his head. Isn't it interesting to pretend to come true? Ali pointed at Ding Yun. Hurry and treat Akir's poison. Young Master Ding shrugged. That will depend on her luck. Chapter 4427. Ming Yasi's gaze changed, and he looked at the person in front of him warily. Just now, most of his attention had been on this person. This person looked like an elegant and gentle gentleman, but he didn't expect him to be so ruthless. Other than Arbor, probably no one present knew when he attacked and how he poisoned her. As expected, young Master Ding's special ability was extremely interesting. Not only could he change his appearance at will, but he also fused the venom of the evil beast, Fire Qilin Fanged Snake, and turned it into his own ability to dissolve poison. This was a person who was born with poison. He didn't need to wave his hand at all. As long as he wanted to, he could release poison and kill people with just his breathing and speech. Akir, hurry up and get over here, Ming Yasi called coldly. Under his icy gaze, Ali could only quickly retract his hand. Once he let go, Akir weakly fell to the ground with a plop, and her entire body lay on the ground powerlessly. Your clumsy act has already been exposed, Ming Yasi said coldly. Hurry up and apologize? Don't you want your life anymore? Akir glared furiously at Arbor. This person was born to oppose her, right? Ever since she started fighting with this person, she had never gained any advantage over him. The most abominable thing was that this kind of woman actually had an ancient marriage contract with Big Brother Yasi. Truly infuriating, truly infuriating. Her brother said she was acting, but she clearly hadn't even started her act when she was really fucking poisoned. Gazing at Arbor's infuriating, exquisite stoic face, Akir pursed her lips as if she found it difficult to speak, and mosquito-like voice came from her throat. So sorry. A wave of fury assaulted Akir's heart. Why did she have to lie here and apologize in a battered and exhausted state while the other party looked down at her with an indifferent gaze from above? His gaze was as if he was looking at something filthy, and it made Akir's heart burn with rage. Her anger burned endlessly. Arbor walked out of the crowd. Ollie looked at her in bewilderment and shouted at her back. Hey, what do you mean by this? Didn't you detoxify the poison in her body? I poisoned them? The little stoic cast them a chilly glance. But this? Ollie looked at her and then turned to look at the innocent young Master Ding. If you open your mouth, this young master will detoxify Akir's poison. Arbor's cold eyes fell on Ollie's face. That cold gaze instantly made the young man tense up. He had an instinctive premonition and wanted to avoid it immediately. You want to die? Everyone stared at her in shock. Wasn't the little stoic a bit too arrogant? She and that young master were facing the entire Underworld Prefecture's army of 10,000 people. How could they say such harsh words to young Master Ollie? Whoever placed the poison should treat it. You've asked the wrong person for help, the little stoic said coldly. He was so angry that he was trembling a bit. He pointed at the little stoic before looking up at his elder brother, whose expression was still unsettled. You really can turn hostile and be heartless. No one present was a fool. Once they heard this, they knew that the little girl was evading the responsibility. It was only then that Akir panicked a bit. She looked pitifully at Ming Yasi. Brother Yasi. Ming Yasi's patience with her had long run out. The more he looked at her, the more annoyed he felt. He had nowhere to vent his anger, so he turned to shout at Ollie. I already said not to bring her here to stir up trouble. You brought this upon yourselves. Deal with it yourselves. Chapter 44:28. Akir couldn't resist wailing, and she did her utmost to restrain her trembling emotions. Ollie couldn't bear it when he saw this. He walked up and whispered in front of Ming Yasi, Brother, you have to help Akir. Akir didn't do it on purpose. Young Sir Ding floated past them with a grin. Ollie immediately glared daggers at him. You brat, stop right there. You're quite impressive. You dare to be so arrogant in the midst of an army of 10,000? Hurry and detoxify the poison in my sister's body. Did you not understand Jojo's meaning? Young Sir Ding turned around and winked at him. Jojo said not to save her. Let her suffer. Ollie was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. When did the little stoic say this? Can't you tell? Jojo's every breath from head to toe and that icy expression on her face are all saying this. Young Sir Ding answered very naturally. Ollie turned to look at Ming Yasi. He didn't say anything, but his gaze also seemed to reveal the same meaning. Only you guys can understand the little stoic's thoughts. He doesn't know anything, right? Ollie rolled his eyes and took a deep breath. Just as he was about to walk towards Arbor, he heard a loud rumble coming from the wall beside them. Some of the soldiers who were originally sitting on the ground hastily stood up. When they turned around to look, they saw a large hole in the wall. Everyone immediately drew their sabers and swords defensively. The atmosphere was so tense that it could erupt at any moment. Everyone was prepared to fight those monsters with green eyes outside. They saw a few soldiers in short armor jump out of the hole with two whooshing sounds. They looked at them with big eyes and hurriedly said, Heir presumptive Crown Prince, there are Ming province soldiers here. When the little stoic saw a person come out of the hole, her eyes clearly brightened. She skipped forward in high spirits and looked behind that person. His Majesty didn't come. Vassal Heir Roan glanced at her helplessly. For some reason, he instantly understood what the little anticipation in her eyes meant. As expected, after his words stopped the little stoic's movements, this fellow immediately put on an icy expression and glanced at him. Crown Prince Roan was well aware of the young lady's tricks, so he quickly said, "His Majesty is not a liar. It's just that I've just ascended to the throne, and there are many things to do, so I don't have the time. His Majesty misses you very much." Crown Prince Roan coughed lightly and said, "He wanted me to tell you, Jojo, I've received your space ring. I can't repay you for your deep affection, so I can only repay you with my body in the future." Everyone's expressions changed. After this weird conversation, they already knew which weirdo was the one who said this. Mr. Jojo stared at Crown Prince Roan expressionlessly. "What happened to your hand?" "It's nothing. It's just that there was some friction when we were fighting the monsters outside," Crown Prince Roan said calmly. "Come here." Arbor roared at him. Everyone's expression changed again. The little crown princess attitude towards the people of Sangzhou was obviously different. "Did you run into Jojo's Lotus and the others on your way here?" the little stoic asked as she applied medicine for Crown Prince Roan. Crown Prince Roan shook his head. "Prince Imo also came?" "All right, why are you here?" "To find you, of course." Arbor glanced at him and turned on his mocking mode. 20,000 people. Oh no, it should be 30,000 people now. They disappeared without a trace after landing on the island. Haha, a bunch of weaklings. Everyone heard a bit of disdain in his voice. Chapter 44:29. It wasn't difficult for Rong Qing to discern the slight disdain in the little stoic's tone. She glanced at her with a rather helpless gaze. "Actually, it really was just an accident. Our fleet encountered Commandery Princess Wushuang. Both sides were negotiating when suddenly violent winds and torrential rain, lightning flashed, and thunder rolled." "How do you know?" Heir Rong looked at her curiously. Arbor glanced askance at Min Yasi, who was quickly walking forward. He also encountered it. Heir Rong wasn't stupid and immediately caught on. "We were tricked by a formation. Who do you think tricked us? Is it Tianyin? Does he want to slaughter us all in one go?" Arbor turned to Rongqing and the others with a stoic face. "Based on my intuition," Rongqing nodded, looking like she was listening attentively. "It's probably because your large group was annoying, so someone purposely set up a formation to temporarily trap you on the island for several days. Once the time limit is up, you'll probably be able to leave." Everyone was stunned. Arbor glanced at them coldly. "The person who lured you onto the island definitely had no intention of harming you. Otherwise, they only needed to lure you into the realm of misfortune." Arbor swept a glance over them. "Just the nightmares alone are enough to scare you to death." The realm of misfortune was equivalent to a realm of certain death. How many people did they think would be able to escape unscathed after they entered? Then what about those green-eyed monsters on the island? Aren't those strange things created by Tianyin? Someone immediately questioned. Arbor shook his head. "Those corpses can only climb and can't stand upright. Their eyes even emit green flames. They should be puppets controlled by a kind of ghost fire, heart-devouring worm that likes to parasitize corpses." Ollie still wanted to speak, but Arbor continued indifferently. Tianyin has already improved the corpse puppets to special class rank 2 and created a type of corpse puppet that can control zither, sounds to kill humans. So how could this kind of thing possibly catch their eye? Tianyin already disdains playing with such low-class things. Now, Tianyin is wantonly refining and improving the medicinal liquid to accelerate the crystallization in the corpse puppet's brain. In the future, he may be able to create a perfect corpse puppet that is closer to a human. It may even be able to hide in the crowd and be unknown to others. Hearing this, Rong Qing, Ming Yasi, and the others couldn't help but shudder. Tianyin can actually develop the corpse puppet cause to such an extent? Arbor nodded with an expressionless little stoic face. It's up to you to believe it or not. Of course I do. Crown Prince Rong immediately nodded his head, showing his unconditional support. When His Majesty left, he instructed us to listen to your opinions. His Majesty praised you for your intelligence and wisdom, which is unique in the world. Your analysis is so orderly and logical. It must be correct. Everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. This Prince Xing's heir looked like a talented, elegant, and exceptionally fine young master, but she didn't expect that he actually had the habit of being a lackey. He didn't forget to seriously praise the little stoic every 3 sentences and conveniently mentioned that this was their monarch's intention. His heart was clear to all. The little stoic looked at him very expressionlessly. However, everyone inexplicably felt that the little girl seemed to be in a pretty good mood right now. Could it be that this fellow subconsciously liked to listen to other people's praises? But it made sense when they thought about it. This stoic face might normally be expressionless, but her mental activities were probably richer than anyone else's. Chapter 4430. Probably, the more arrogant and icy her face was, the more awkward and fiery her heart was. Everyone couldn't help but glance at the little stoic a few more times. Her expression was solemn as she asked without batting an eyelid, "You said Wu Shuang also came?" Rongqing nodded. A day ago, she exchanged a few words with Commandery Princess Wu Shuang across the boat. At the time, third young Master Fu was also by her side. "We're fine, so those two should also be fine." Rongqing merely thought she was worried about the safety of the Divine Prefecture Army, so she comforted her. Arbor muttered to himself for a moment before nodding and saying, "That's probably the case. May I ask who lives on this deserted island?" Heir Rong asked in confusion. "What are your intentions for keeping us here for no reason?" Arbor appeared very calm. "Since we're here, let's just take things as they come. There is no use in being anxious. In any case, everyone had an inner world and had food and drinks. If worst came to worst, they could just cultivate here. What do you mean, since we're here? Of course you can say that when you're not injured or in pain. If you're locked up on this deserted island for 3 to 5 years, let's see if you can still smile at that time." Ollie grabbed Akir, who was twisting her body with all her might. "Akir, don't!" He wanted to persuade her to stop provoking this fiendish little stoic. In the end, he simply couldn't hold onto this jealous woman and flung her away. "Hand over the antidote." Arbor turned around and stared icily at the woman who stumbled over. Before she could even get close, Crown Prince Rong signaled with his eyes, and the woman was stopped by 2 Sangzhou guards. Akir struggled with all her might as her arms were grabbed. She shouted like a madwoman, "Woman, don't push your luck. Hurry and hand over the antidote." Arbor couldn't help but frown and turn to look at Ming Yasi. "I've always wanted to ask you a question." Ming Yasi's intuition told him that this guy wouldn't ask any good questions. His mouth silently twitched, but his expression was very calm. "Speak. Why do you always keep an idiot by your side to cause trouble? Doesn't this show off your intelligence?" Ali's eyes couldn't help but widen. You? How could he speak like this without giving Akir any face? Akir understood the meaning in her words. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws as she angrily said, "What did you say? You woman! How dare you?" Minius turned a deaf ear to Akir's shouts. He glanced at Arbor and said seriously, "Would you abandon your younger siblings if they were stupid?" Arbor thought about it and shook his head. "No." Ming Yasi shrugged helplessly, "But I will beat them up and reform them." The little stoic answered very smoothly, and her expression was even deadpan. "If there's no use beating them once, then beat them once every day. If that doesn't work, then I'll beat him up 3 times a day." Everyone was speechless. To be honest, being your sister-in-law might be quite tough. Ali's expression twitched slightly, and his entire face twisted strangely. Inexplicably, Ming Yas couldn't help but laugh. Suppressing the laughter that was about to slide down his lips, he nodded and said, "What do you mean?" "You may begin." Everyone. Rongqing coughed lightly and led the group of Sangzhou guards to silently retreat a dozen or so steps, leaving an empty space for Ming Province's crown prince to do as he pleased. Ming Yasi helplessly glanced at Arbor before raising his hand slightly and saying, "Guards." Two Ming Province guards immediately arrived behind His Highness. Their expressions were very serious, but they also carried a faint trace of apprehension as they sneaked a glance at the little stoic. Chapter 44:31. Brother, what are you doing? Brother. Akir was terrified and uneasy. She vaguely sensed that something bad was about to happen. Sure enough, when the two Nether Province guards used rods to lift her up and pin her to the ground, Akir finally sensed that something was amiss, and her body started to tremble slightly. Her big brother Yasi actually ordered people to beat her with rods in public. It wasn't that she couldn't withstand those rods with her cultivation, but she truly couldn't bear it. Big brother. Ollie also jumped in fright and hastily went up to plead for leniency. Big brother. Akir knows she was wrong. Can't you spare her this time? Yasi swept him a glance with an indifferent expression. Do you still want to save her? The little stoic had already spoken. How could she be satisfied if he didn't give her a good beating? Relent and save her? Ollie glanced at Yasi oddly. His lips moved for a long time, but he couldn't spit out a single word. On the other side, Akir's mournful screams had already resounded loudly. Yasi glanced at his younger brother considerately. There's no harm in saying what you want to say. Big brother, you didn't really listen to the little stoic's slanderous words, right? What, one beating a day? If it didn't work, then 3 beatings a day? This couldn't be true, right? Yasi swept him a glance. Although the little stoic's attitude isn't good, she's right about one thing. You and Akir should indeed be taught a lesson. One had to know that there was always someone better than you. Of course, it wasn't good to keep stirring up trouble, but it was even worse to stir up trouble when you didn't have the strength. Ollie looked at his older brother in astonishment. If it was possible, tears might be streaming down his cheeks right now. Did Big Brother really get successfully brainwashed by the damn stoic? Ow. Akir gnashed her teeth and shouted angrily. Arbor, just you wait. I won't let you off MMPH. Before she could finish speaking, her mouth was stuffed with a dirty cloth strip. The Nether Province guard who stuffed her mouth noticed Akir's murderous gaze, and his hands started trembling. Unfortunately, there was nothing he could do. With just one look from the Crown Prince, a mere guard like him could only follow orders. On the other side, a trace of killing intent flashed past Arbor's eyes. Both Yas and Ollie, who were standing beside her, saw it clearly and were startled. Ollie didn't understand this girl, but Ming Yasi understood her too well. If it was too troublesome, she would personally solve the problem. Akir, this fellow, spoke without thinking, but she didn't know that she had reached a critical juncture of life and death. Don't worry, after we go back this time, I will send her to the northern desert to train her temperament and skills. She will never appear in front of you again. When Ollie heard this, his face instantly turned pale. He turned to look at Akir, who also had a shocked expression, and hurriedly begged for mercy. Big brother, how can Akir go to a place like the northern desert? Everyone else can go there to train, so why can't she? Ming Yas glanced at him coldly. Akir was indeed extremely stupid. She still didn't know the principle that trouble comes from the mouth. He was saving her. He felt stifled just thinking about it. His sister-in-law was unreliable, and the little stoic was right. Education really had to start from a young age. Back then, when she courted death, he would beat her 3 times a day. He guaranteed that she would be obedient. Now young Master Ding floated to Arbor's side and glanced at her. Release? Sir Jojo swept him a glance before his gaze landed on Ming Yas's face. Chapter 44:32. Yasi immediately understood and nodded. It's a deal. It was already pretty good that Akir's life could be preserved. Wasn't it just throwing her into the northern desert for training? Perhaps she could even improve her abilities and combat strength. Of course, whether Akir could understand Big Brother's painstaking efforts was another matter altogether. Ollie glanced at Yasi and opened his mouth, but under the latter's stern gaze, he ultimately shut his mouth. At least he still had some brains, and naturally saw that the little stoic already had the intention to kill Akir. If Akir still didn't know what was good for her, she would very likely become an ice-cold corpse. With this stoic, stubborn personality, if she really wanted to kill, even Big Brother probably wouldn't be able to stop her. Ding Yun's poison was related to his special ability. Normal antidotes were completely ineffective, and only apothecaries could cure it. However, the level of the medicine was lower than the level of his special ability, so it couldn't be cured. Yasi glanced at him somewhat guardedly. For the majority of people, special groups like poison masters and demonic masters seemed to be classified as malicious and were very dreaded. Akir was knocked unconscious and carried away. Upon seeing this, Arbor's gaze was full of disdain. She actually fainted after just 20 or so strikes. It could be seen that she was truly spoiled since childhood. After all, she wasn't a normal person. She was clearly a spiritualist, but her body was so delicate. She was truly a dregs piled up by medicine and couldn't be compared to spiritualists who had properly advanced. When Ollie saw the little stoic's gaze, he couldn't help but feel extremely stifled. However, he learned his lesson this time and silently shut his mouth, no longer criticizing this fellow. Arbor walked along the large field and looked at the hole in the stone wall that someone had dug out. There's a tunnel next to it. It's connected to a cave about the same size as this one. Rongqing followed beside her and said, "When we came, we already cleaned up those corpses. At first, everyone thought it was a zombie produced by Tianyan." Rongqing paused. "Now that I think about it, it really is the deep fire heart devouring worm you spoke of. No wonder there are always two balls of fire emitting from the eyes after killing the corpses. That thing shouldn't be difficult to deal with." Rongqing thought of the nether fire heart devouring worm that could be destroyed with a single slap. "I just don't know how many there are. Although there were quite a few of them, if they were to really fight in this cave, they were afraid that the flying spiritual energy would accidentally injure their own people. At that time, he really didn't know whether to fight or not." "How big is this place?" Arbor asked on a whim. "I'm afraid it won't be too small." Rongqing pondered for a moment and said, "Just look at these two caves. They can hold over 20,000 people. You can see how vast this underground cave is. I wonder if the people who locked you up here can hear you." Arbor muttered to himself. "What?" Rongqing lowered her head and saw the little stoic take out a trumpet-shaped object. The corner of his mouth twitched unconsciously. Little rascal's hand gestures flew, and dozens of talismans were thrown out. Ripples immediately appeared in the surroundings. Rongqing raised her eyebrows. "A soundproof wall?" After a few whooshing sounds, a faint explosion was heard. Yasi walked up and looked around. "Someone actually set up a soundproof wall?" "Why?" "Naturally, it's because I think you guys are noisy," Arbor answered honestly with disdain in her eyes. Chapter 4433. How are we arguing? Ollie retorted indignantly. "Ever since we stepped onto this lousy island, we've been locked up in the same place for more than 4 to 5 days. There's no way out at all." Arbor uttered an "oh" and raised the megaphone in his hand. "What are you doing?" "MHM. You do it." Arbor suddenly handed the megaphone in his hand to Ollie. She felt that she needed to maintain her stoic and calm image in front of outsiders. Wouldn't it be better to find a random lackey to do this kind of shouting mission? Ollie was dumbfounded, but his hand still involuntarily took the megaphone. "You shout." Arbor nodded at him. "Shout what?" "Shout whatever you want. You can even curse." "Ollie, I'm crazy, right? Casually shouting and cursing at the air? Don't dilly-dally." Arbor glanced at him with an expression that said, "Why are you so stupid?" If JoJo's Lotus was here, there was no need for JoJo to say so much nonsense. He would know what JoJo meant with just a glance. Ollie looked at Ming Yasi and Rongqing in bewilderment. Ming Yasi said helplessly, "Go ahead and curse." "Don't you know how to curse? How do you usually scold old who?" "Scold him again." Strategist old who was sitting in the group and watching the show. Was he implicated even though he was sitting so far away? Ollie was a bit spirited now and cupped his hands at old Who. Big brother told me to curse. Please bear with it. Why didn't you go shit when your big brother told you to? Ollie chuckled as he turned on the megaphone. He cleared his throat and let out a string of curses. Arbor stood next to Ollie calmly, without even a crease in his brows. The other people in the cave couldn't take it anymore and covered their ears. This sound was too loud. It was as if thunder was raining down from the heavens, rumbling nonstop. Don't you think it's noisy, Jojo? Ming Yasi looked speechlessly at the little stoic who was as cold as snow. In the past, this little fellow would find the slightest bit of noise noisy and want to throw people out at any time. But now, this little stoic was as unmoving as a mountain, as if she hadn't heard him. Rongqing couldn't help but smirk. Don't ask. She can't hear what you're saying right now. As soon as Ollie opened his mouth, the little bastard had already blocked his hearing. A pair of pitch-black eyes turned, and its gaze wandered along the cave walls. It wasn't long before Arbor swiftly turned around and swiftly flashed toward a certain direction, and his hand was like a bolt of lightning as he grabbed out of thin air. An angry roar immediately sounded in the air. Stop cursing. Layers of ripples appeared on the cave wall in an instant. A shriveled and thin little old man suddenly appeared on the ceiling. His expression was somewhat flustered and exasperated as he angrily lowered his head and glared at them. Everyone around was shocked. When did this person appear on top of the cave wall? His aura was so faint that no one noticed it. Could it be that he used some kind of teleportation talisman? You little child, how dare you be so rude to this old man? The old man fumed as he glared at Arbor, who was hovering in the air in front of him. Arbor didn't say another word and reached out to grab his left hand. The old man retreated a step, and his figure flickered like a candle. Arbor swiftly retreated several steps and threw a dozen or so reveal talismans at a corner. He swiped his hand and picked up a golden club in passing, running over with it on his shoulder. Thump, 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 thump. That bandit tyrant's skills were breathtaking. Arbor swung his golden club and smashed it against the wall. Chapter 44:34. His speed was so fast that the dumbfounded crowd was completely bewildered by his actions, unable to make heads or tails of his actions. Shishi. Ollie, who had already stopped making noise, turned to look at big brother Ming Yasi. What is she doing? What was going on? Why did he feel like his intelligence couldn't keep up with the little stoic's speed? There should be quite a few people who felt the same as him among the crowd. Among so many people were Big Brother, Rong, and Young Master Ding the only ones who could understand what this fellow was doing. Breaking talisman formations. Ming Yasi glanced at Ollie exasperatedly. He wanted to give him some pointers, but he muttered to himself for a moment before saying, Ollie, you should read more books. Ollie, could it be that he couldn't keep up with the little stoic's unrestrained thoughts if he didn't read books? Was this his fault? This fellow didn't say anything when she did things, so who could understand the meaning behind her eyes? After Arbor smashed the stone wall fiercely, the stone wall directly collapsed with a loud bang, and a pile of rubble slid down with a crash. It instantly provoked a wave of furious roars. Stop, stop, stop! You little bastard, stop right there! The shriveled little old man they saw on the ceiling earlier jumped out from behind the stone wall with a bang, his face covered in dirt. At this time, his wrinkled old face was completely scrunched up, and his pupils were turning upside down. His finger that was pointing at Xiao Mu was trembling, as if he had suddenly contracted epilepsy and could not stop at all. Sir Jojo cupped his hands in salute and said solemnly, Senior, this junior greets you. Everyone, my heavens, this young crown prince consort was so ferocious just a moment ago. How did she become so adorable all of a sudden? Sister-in-law, sister-in-law. Is my sister-in-law inside? Get the fuck out of the way. Why are you blocking my way? Sister-in-law, 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 sister-in-law. I heard your voice, sister-in-law, sister-in-law. Schwang, schwang, don't be so agitated. Lil sister-in-law is inside. Why are there so many people? Go away, go away. Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, did something happen to you? Did anyone bully you? I'm coming, sister-in-law. And Wu Shuang hopped all the way, trying to see the figure in the depths of the cave. However, the large group of tall and strong soldiers in front of her blocked her line of sight. She could only keep jumping and shouting, "Sister-in-law, sister-in-law, Shuang is here to save me." Arbor's face darkened as he turned to look. His line of sight was blocked by Ming Yasi, young Master Ding, and Air Rong. She glanced at them and suddenly asked, "Is it funny?" Crown Prince Rong was the first to shake his head. "What's so funny? What a joke. Jojo's way of doing things is rather serious. It's not funny at all." Young Master Ding was speechless. Did this guy inherit Duan Yu's genes? Or perhaps, before he left, Duan Yu had solemnly warned him about the key points he had to understand when interacting with Sir Jojo. It had to be said that Cult Master Ding was telling the truth. Along the way, when Crown Prince Rong had nothing to do, he would take out the letter the monarch gave him and study it. Sure enough, he immediately gained a favorable impression of Sir Jojo upon meeting him. "Insolent child," the shriveled old man finally shouted after inhaling and exhaling for a long time. You scoundrel, brat, look at what you've done." The old man was fuming with rage as he pointed at the mess behind him. Chapter 44:35. Arbor followed his finger and looked in that direction. She saw several long tables and benches placed in an inner room behind the stone wall. The tables were piled with all kinds of shiny ores and crystals. A four-legged cauldron was suspended in the middle of the room. Faint green flames emerged from the bottom of the cauldron, and gusts of air hit the cauldron lid, making gurgling noises. The little stoic was curious and walked toward that cauldron. "This is the legendary weapon refining cauldron ranked second, the Heavenly Forge Cauldron?" When everyone heard the words Heavenly Forge Cauldron, their expressions immediately changed, and their gazes simultaneously looked toward that lean and skinny little old man. The old man was dressed in gray and coarse hemp clothing. His hair was disheveled and his face was covered in dirt, and his body emitted a sour stench. From the looks of it, he had been standing in this inner room for who knew how long. He probably hadn't taken a bath. "Who are you, little doll?" The old man stroked his 3-inch short beard and glanced at her. He said in deadly earnest, "You actually know the name of this old man's Heavenly Forge Cauldron. This old man has been in seclusion for many years, so I didn't know there was someone in this world who could recognize this old man's Heavenly Forge Cauldron. You are Senior Hao Guang, right?" "That's right." Hao Guang put on a gratified expression and stroked his short beard again, his expression easing for a rare moment. "What is this little doll's name? And who is your master?" "Do you recognize Ancestor Xuanji?" the little stoic asked indifferently. Her words were like a stone thrown into a lake, immediately causing people's moods to fluctuate wildly, creating layers of ripples. Hao Guang abruptly widened his eyes and looked at her cautiously. "Who are you?" "I am Ancestor Xuanji's personal disciple." Arbor stood with her hands behind her back and got straight to the point. Her expression was extremely solemn, cold, and unsmiling. But it was this serious little appearance that made Ming Yasi, Rong Qing, and Ding Yun's lips twitch uncontrollably. They kept feeling that this little stoic in front of them was a bit like a quack. "What? I'm the second-generation head of the Xuanji school." The little stoic's serious face was unperturbed as she straightened her back and stood in front of the light. "Arbor." Everyone suddenly realized that Senior Scattered Light's old face had changed a lot. His face was flashing with different colors, and it was very exciting. He was stunned for a few seconds before he snapped. "What did you say?" "I'm your second-generation sect master." Arbor continued expressionlessly. "Do you know Seniors Qin Shi and Lu Zheng?" Hao Guang's body trembled slightly. Suddenly, he opened his small eyes wide. Looking at his shocked expression, his eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. "Qin Shi? Lu Zheng? You really are you? The second-generation sect master of the Xuanji school?" If he had not come into contact with Qin Shi and Lu Zheng, how would he know their names? Moreover, the little girl's serious expression made him unable to think of anything else. With this kind of stoic face, she probably disdained to lie to deceive people. Besides, this matter couldn't be concealed for too long to begin with. Whether she was the second-generation sect master or not, he would eventually encounter Chun-Shi and Lu Zheng in the future, and he would know after asking. Do you have any proof? Arbor thought for a moment. I gave the nameplates of your 103 first-generation disciples to seniors Chun-Shi and Lu Zheng. Your name should be on them. Hao Guang's eyes widened. I've already assimilated the Xuanji pill that Ancestor Xuanji gave me. The little stoic continued to say in a shocking manner. She shook her head. There's no other proof. Chapter 44:36. But at this point, as long as Hao Guang wasn't an idiot, he should know that the stoic face didn't lie to him. This fellow quickly changed his indignant expression and stared at Arbor with bright eyes. He cupped his hands in greeting and said, Greetings, second faction master. The second-generation sect master, Lord Xiao, looked at him expressionlessly. Tell me, why did you lock them up here? Hao Guang hastily grumbled, his expression especially aggrieved and helpless. Second faction master, this subordinate didn't want to do this. But a large group of them are making a racket. It's truly annoying. Ali's eyes immediately widened. Senior Hao Guang, you really lured us ashore and imprisoned us because we were making a racket? But although we made a racket for a day or two, we will leave in the end. Wouldn't it be even more noisy if you imprison us on the island like this? They weren't a bunch of dead people, so they naturally would do their best to find a way out. How could they not make a ruckus after going back and forth? Of course it can't be, because of that senseless reason. Hao Guang glared at him grumpily and looked at the people standing around the little stoic as if she wanted to say something but hesitated. He turned to look at Arbor and said, Second faction master, there's a reason for this. The Tianji Mystic Realm in the Snow Ridge Holy Land will open in a few days. That old man stroked his short beard and harumphed. If these people accidentally step inside, humph, they will die without a doubt. One of the entrances is at the bottom of the sea where the formation is set up. I lured them ashore so that they wouldn't continue to dawdle there. If these people insist on staying there, I reckon they won't be far from death. Arbor glanced at him and said with a slight nod, Many thanks. If these bumpkins really entered that mystic realm, they wouldn't be able to get help even if they cried for help. It would be a joke if the elites of the 3 provinces were scattered in a lousy mystic realm before they were assembled. Senior Hao Guang lamented. Actually, there are at least 2 mystic realm entrances nearby. The one at the bottom of the sea is one of them. There's a realm of misfortune on the island. Speaking of which, when I came out of seclusion today, I sensed that the realm of misfortune had disappeared for no reason. I don't know what happened. Hao Guang sighed, with a perplexed expression. Young Master Ding silently glanced at the little stoic beside him. Just as the latter was about to speak, he heard a joyful cry. Sister-in-law! And Wu Shuang finally squeezed through the crowd and ran to her side with a cheer. I didn't hear wrongly. And Wu Shuang tilted her head with a grin and quickly hopped up to her. You're really here. It's great to see you. Princess Wu Shuang looked around her and asked, Where's my eldest brother? Speaking of this, Sir Jojo was a little angry. His little stoic face tightened as he said, Your big brother has been running for a long time. We don't even know where he is now. Logically speaking, after the realm of misfortune was broken, Imole Yin and the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal should have been able to sense her aura. But now, the sapling also spread out its hands, indicating that neither of them had contacted it. Eldest brother is missing? And Wu Shuang was astonished. No wonder it was so strange. She knew it. If sister-in-law was here, how could eldest brother not be by her side? Sister-in-law, don't worry. I'll accompany you to find him. Princess Wu Shuang grasped in Wu Shuang's small hand. She looked at the old man in astonishment, as if she had just realized that there was someone in front of her. This senior is? Chapter 44:37. This is Senior Hao Guang. As soon as Arbor finished speaking, and Wu Shuang opened her mouth wide, Third Young Master Fu also looked at the old man in surprise. This ordinary-looking old man, standing with his head held high, turned out to be the legendary divine weapon master, Senior Hao Guang. The old man, who owned the heavenly forging furnace? Third young Master Fu and Princess Wushuang cupped their hands and greeted him. Greetings, Senior Hao Guang. It's rumored that Senior Hao Guang lives near the Snow Ridge Holy Ground. I didn't expect to see him today. Princess Wushuang was very excited. I heard that Senior's heavenly forging furnace is known as the strongest furnace in the world. Can I have a look at it? The old man said proudly. You have good taste. He stepped aside and waved his hand. The furnace hanging in the middle of the room fell into his palm with a whoosh. It shrunk to 2 feet in size and started to burn. And Wushuang's little face was full of curiosity. She was about to touch the furnace when Arbor grabbed her. Arbor shook his head at her. The furnace fire is full of yang energy. I'm afraid your touch will be hurt. The old man was the owner of the heavenly forging furnace, so he would not be hurt by it. As for other people, if they touched it casually, the consequences could be foreseen. Oh, and Wushuang immediately understood. She nodded her head repeatedly. Then, she rolled her big eyes in a circle. Seeing her expression, Arbor could not help but laugh secretly. This guy was blatantly coveting the old man's heavenly forging furnace. Thinking that he had also planned to rob the old man's heavenly forging furnace, Arbor could not help but raise his hand to scratch his chin and pull on Wushuang again. And Wushuang was staring at the heavenly forging furnace with all her attention. At this moment, she was pulled back by Arbor and slightly came back to her senses. She smiled at the old man awkwardly. Senior Hao Guang, by the way, have you lived here for a long time to forge weapons? Hao Guang nodded. Of course. The old man looked at Wushuang suspiciously. Maybe the princess's eyes were too obvious. You're also interested in refining? Princess Wushuang nodded without hesitation and took out something from her pocket. Senior, please take a look. Arbor and third young Master Fu's eyelids twitched slightly. They saw the old man take the ring from Wushuang's hand and touch it in surprise. With a flick of his hand, a stream of light slid across the ring. It instantly turned into a long sword and fell into the old man's palm. The 3-foot-long green peak shone with a cold sword light. This sword was the frost sword that the crown prince had given to the princess. The blade itself was covered with a layer of frost power. When a sword was swung, frost energy would constantly emit. Even spirit realm cultivators would find it difficult to get close to him, let alone ordinary people. Some of the spirit realm soldiers sitting nearby felt a layer of coldness pass through their clothes. They couldn't help but shiver as faint sparks appeared in their eyes. What a peerless sword! Good, it's really a peerless sword. The old man's eyes shone with a strange light. It's a perfect form, close to a sacred weapon. TSK. I've been in seclusion for many years. I didn't know that there was another divine weapon master in this world. And Wushuang pouted and tilted her head. Senior Hao Guang, how do you know that this sword wasn't made for me? Hao Guang immediately glared at her and rolled his eyes. Do you think I'm a fool? This old man has observed your hands, and I can tell that they are not used for refining tools. Huh? And Wushuang snorted. Chapter 4438. Rolling her eyes, she raised her small white hand and reached out to Hao Guang. Give it back. Hao Guang was holding the sword and admiring it carefully. Hearing in Wushuang's words, he said impatiently, Wait. What are you waiting for? And Wushuang glanced at him and continued to poke him with her finger. Give it back. Don't dawdle. It's my sword. This sword has a talisman array attached to it. The power of frost is not affected at all. The old man sighed. There are always new talents in every generation. Girl, don't rush to take it back. Hao Guang's dog eyes were almost shining. May I ask who made this sword? Princess Wushuang smiled at him and crooked her small hand at him. Mr. Jojo looked at Hao Guang expressionlessly. He stretched his head and approached Wushuang. Senior Hao Guang, is this heavenly forging furnace for sale? Third young Master Fu pressed his twitching eyebrows and looked at Arbor. He said helplessly, Shuang. And Wu Shuang glanced back at him and then turned to the old man. Senior Hao Guang, is it for sale? And Wu Shuang snatched the sword from his hand, turned it around, and put the ring on her finger. Guess, how old was this divine weapon grandmaster when he forged this sword? She asked. Guess, how old was the divine weapon grandmaster when he forged this sword? Miss Wu Shuang said proudly. Obviously, she didn't want the old man to guess. She said, 21 years old. The old man opened his small eyes wide. His eyes were shining. Is it for sale? Miss Wu Shuang asked again. Anyway, it will be more useful in your hands than in his. You don't want this divine weapon to be covered in dust, master? The old man thought for a while and coughed. You just want to find an excellent heavenly forging furnace, right? I can provide one for you, but not this heavenly forging furnace. The old man's eyes turned slightly, and he said with a smile, I see that you are all young talents, and your cultivations are very good. How about this? I'll point you in the right direction. Inside there, you'll definitely be able to find a refining furnace that's even better than the heavenly forging furnace. Sure enough, as soon as the old man said this, Wu Shuang immediately took the bait and asked with sparkling eyes, Where? Arbor was speechless. A mystic realm. Fecta's secret realm. The old man stroked his beard and smiled. Then, he glanced at the young lady and said, Second headmaster, you don't have to go. Let the young people take risks and gain experience. It will be good for their cultivation in the future. And Wu Shuang was expressionless. My sister-in-law is a few years younger than me. Third young master Fu couldn't help but laugh. He turned to Hao Guang and said, Senior, may I know which expert created this Tianji secret realm? You don't need to know. You just need to know that this is a mystic realm set up by a shameless old bastard. Senior Scattered Light said disdainfully, as if someone had stepped on his sore spot. Arbor blinked his eyes and felt that the old bastard's name sounded familiar. He carefully pondered over the Fecta's secret realm several times and couldn't help but frown. Fecta, Z, great master of mechanisms and concealed weapons, Senior Tianjizi? Third young master Fu was shocked. Heavens, how many legendary old seniors were hidden in the Snow Ridge holy land of the Forgotten River realm? The old man snorted and glared at third young master Fu. What's there to be surprised about? That old bastard is the one who activated it. On the other hand, Xiaomu was also a bit taken aback. She really hadn't thought about it this way before. Chapter 4439. She really didn't expect that the old scoundrel whom seniors Lu Zheng and Qin Qi scolded countless times was actually that trap and concealed weapons master. Fate had to start from the Holy Water Sect's Maple Pavilion, right? At that time, the Tianji treasure blueprint created by Senior Tianji Z chased after her with all its might. Duan Yu and Mo Lien even smugly thought that it was because of her outstanding aptitude. Now, it seemed that it was most likely due to her bloodline. What kind of ill-fated fate was this? Her encounter with the two ancestors was actually so bizarre. That's right. According to Qin Shi, Lu Zheng, and Ming Guang, Arbor had reason to believe that this Senior Tianji Z was that heartless and unfaithful heartless man who betrayed Senior Xuanji. In addition, Senior Xuanji's bizarre third condition was that if she met Tianji Z's disciple in the future, she had to use her strength to crush him and slap his face from this. It could be seen that this was indeed a bizarre, ill-fated fate. Not two. She didn't expect to meet the two ancestors like this. Everyone secretly glanced at her stoic face. There seemed to be undulating waves under her stoic and serene appearance. Why? Everyone was puzzled and looked at Sir Jojo's serene expression. What is it? Is there a problem? And Wu Shuang asked hastily. Arbor shook her head and looked up at the old man. When will the mystic realm open? Probably in the next 1 or 2 days. The old man's expression suddenly paused, and he hastily shouted, Second sect master, you can't go in. You still have to lead our Xuanji sect to glory. She couldn't just die like this in the mystic realm that the old scoundrel set up. Arbor's expression was unruffled as she calmly said, I must go. The old man couldn't help but secretly regret it. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have tricked the little girl next to him. The second sect master was actually so loyal. She was going to accompany her friends on an adventure, right? Second sect master, please reconsider. Why must you go to a dangerous place? How can young people like them go to such a dangerous place? You shouldn't set foot in it. I'm going to slap their faces. Everyone looked at her in bewilderment, thinking that they had misheard. Shouldn't Jojo, Samus say, "Wherever my friends are, I'll be there"? Your sect leader Xuanji has given me a strange mission. It's time to complete it. The corner of the old man's mouth twitched. Looking at the expressions of the young masters around the young lady, they were all trying their best to endure something. The old man suddenly burst into laughter. As he laughed, he looked at Crown Prince Roan and the others suspiciously. These people also looked like they wanted to laugh, but why were they holding it in? Don't you feel suffocated? Second sect leader, what do you mean? Arbor glanced at him coldly. Your sect, Master Xuanji, asked me to find the descendant of Tianjizi's ancestor and slap his face. I thought about it. What's the point of slapping my disciple's face? Why don't I just enter his secret realm and crack all his traps and give him a slap in the face? What do you think? Isn't it precisely because you can't break his mechanism that you're wasting your time here for so long? Hao Guang was stunned, then burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that he kept slapping his thighs. Good. This is how the second sect master of Xuanji school should be. Arbor glanced at him. Rongqing and the others couldn't help but twitch their mouths. How did the Xuanji school disciples come up with the title of second sect master? Second sect master, I'll prepare some defensive equipment for you. You must accept it. Don't worry, I've never thought of rejecting. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.